The second act is about to begin.
Oh, come on, y'all. Y'all heard the Ursher.
If I know Shakespeare, Thanos about to kill everybody up in this bitch. No. I hated this play.
How they gonna kill Othello?
Man, that trifling ass Iago, I knew he was up to something. They should have killed him in the first act.
How they gonna kill Othello?
And then how Othello gonna do himself in with a dagger? How doth that happen?
Let me tell you something. If a brother killed himself every time he broke up with a white bitch, this world would be bereft of brothers.
And you be talking to a skull right now.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Where's Shakespeare's at?
Shakespeare.
Oh, he's right there. Enough. Okay. Prithee, make way. Prithee, make way. Prithee, make way. Be gone, Sirrah. You killed Othello.
A black man got it going on and you shuffle off his mortal coil?
I say unto thee, that's a tragedy.
Mm-hmm. Oh, 'tis that not the troubadour Kanye of the West?
What? Where's... Oh, no, wait.
Truth be told, my lords, 'tis not I who penned this dreadful play. 'Twas Christopher Marlowe.
Yes, it was. Thou already tried to use that line of argument when the Jews wanted to kick your ass after the Merchant of Venice.
We doth not purchase it, Slick Willie. We doth not purchase it.
I am from beyond. Listen, and all you desire will be yours. Welcome to Spider-Dan and the Secret Balls. Prepare for Prattle.
Secret Ball Stories.
Welcome to Prattle World. I am your host, the ever-amazing, ever-spectacular Spider-Dan. And in this podcast, I spotlight entertainment's best-kept secrets that a mainstream audience may find boring. And welcome to Secret Ball Stories, where I invite guests to count down a personal top 5 list in high-fidelity fashion. And speaking of impeccable music taste, we have a right gemstone of a human being, a learned man, a teacher, a philosopher, a podcaster, a writer, you name it. He does it. He has many hats and he wears them all at once. It is Mr. Tony Farina. Hello, sir. How are you?
Spider-Dan. I am very well. By the way, I've been very excited about this. My wife, I'm sure, is going to be glad that it's over so she can quit hearing me talk about all of these movies. Although she is, she's in. She has some thoughts on this too. It's just
okay.
Yeah, that's a good. It's like this isn't something I did totally in a vacuum. But it's one of those ones where I liken this show because we've been talking about it for a long time. For her, I liken this to Birdman. Let's get in our Wayback Machine and go back to the year that both Birdman and Boyhood came out. Boyhood, as a Linklater fan, I had known about Boyhood the whole time it was filming. So I had been waiting and what a cool idea. And I can't wait for this movie with so brilliant. And I mean, she just nonstop. And then another time a Linklater movie would come out, of course I would see it. And then I'd be like, oh my God, she's like, oh. And then Birdman, that was Michael Keaton. He never really went away. But like, that was when he was like, everybody remember how fucking amazing I am. So for, again, about 18 months, Birdman, because there was a lot of post-production on Birdman, as you may or may not recall, because maybe you didn't follow it as closely as I did. So when both of those movies finally came out, she was at the end of both of them. She was like, they were both very good. I'm just glad they're over. I'm glad they're out so you can stop talking about them. So I liken this to that for her. She's like,
wow.
Although we've only been talking about this for maybe 6 months, where both of those things were literally years. But when I get excited about something, it's on my mind and it comes out. Whatever I'm doing, I'm relating it to that. And I'm like, ooh, I should think of that. And ooh, is that like I tried to convince you that Heather's was Macbeth and I was like, it doesn't work. But I was trying hard. I'm constantly doing so. I'm so excited. It's been months we've been planning this. So
planning, talking, researching, watching.
Yeah.
So we've not even mentioned what we're doing.
Sorry.
But we'll get into it. So we are looking at top 5 loose Shakespeare film adaptations or movie adaptations of the Bard's work. So such a brave new world with such films in it. We are going to pick out some of our favorites. And again, these are loose, so they may not be as a fitting adaptation. It's not sacrosanct, so to speak. It's not precious. It's just the framing device or characters or a few ideas in some way. So we're going to talk about all of those. And some of them are direct adaptations, and the directors or writers have said it is a direct adaptation. And so, every love story is Romeo and Juliet anyway. So, Shakespeare is so involved in storytelling anyway. Any storytelling since Shakespeare owes some sort of debt to him. Before we start, though, Tony, obviously I'm a former actor. I've tread the boards. I've done The Tempest. I've done Macbeth. I've done Midsummer Night's Dream. So I'm fairly au fait with Shakespeare in a performance. In a performance kind of viewscape of that. But what is it about Shakespeare as a teacher that you gravitate towards?
Sure, that's a good question. Well, I mean, obviously, I fell in love with it as a student, as you do, or you fall out of love with him as a student, as you do. I feel like in America, anyway, he's big in high school, and I know that will come up because some of our picks. I think we each have 2 high school picks.
I think so, yeah.
So, and there's more options than that too. And of course, some of those will come up with our honorable mentions, I'm sure. So you read them because you do. And I was just always a reader. But with Shakespearean stuff, I actually didn't really start getting into it until I started reading them in high school. And I just fell in love with it right away. So what I liked is I'm always looking for the other thing, the next layer, the part of the onion. And so for me as a student studying Shakespeare, there's always going to be like, let's learn the poetry and let's learn the rhyme and meter and whatever. But to me, there's always that modern day application. Like we never really looked at Shakespeare through the lens of his own life because he's a bit of a mystery, which is where all of the Anonymous, that movie was fine too, by the way. I liked Anonymous for what it was, but it's bullshit, of course. He wrote the plays, but I get what people. I get it. I mean, I'm interested in that. I always watch those. I'm a sucker for them, but I don't believe it.
I love conspiracy theories too. Like I'm a sucker for them. But I'm just like, do we like? It's that long ago. Do we really need to dig this shit up and just be like, it's so, maybe he didn't write it. Ooh.
Yeah, my favorite is that because one of my all-time, probably my favorite work of fiction is Don Quixote. So my favorite thing is there's a thing out there where people are arguing that Cervantes and Shakespeare were the same person. I'm like, okay, wait. So people are saying there's no way one person could have written all these plays, but you're going to say one person wrote the first novel of all time and one of the funniest works of fiction of all time and wrote all these plays. Like that makes more sense to you than just say there could be 2 brilliant writers, one in Spain and one in England, and they wrote some amazing stuff. Oh, okay. You're out of your mind. But so for me, though, it's always the reader response stuff. And that I always think is the best way to go into any kind of literature. You should always go through the reader response lens before you start doing the other things. So for me, as a student, looking at Romeo and Juliet, looking at Caesar, the Henrys, which will come up today, that not 6, 4, 5, the 4s in part 5, those are really technically one story. Loved those. And they just really clicked. And like from a reader response perspective, I always found a character in there that I liked or I could identify with because what Shakespeare does best, besides obviously the language itself is beautiful and we'll talk about that, but what he does best is characterizations because he's doing plays. And so he gives every reader of his stuff, every viewer of his work, somebody to relate to. And because everybody forgets, like we think of him as highfalutin. He was just a working dude.
No, absolutely. Well, his audience were mostly like, there was prostitutes, there's food sellers, there's all this other stuff going on. Like he had to fight to get his work heard and seen, and it was just on. People, it's like today where everyone goes to watch a play or watch a film, they're all on their iPhones and stuff.
Right.
It's the same situation. Like he is fighting to be heard, and it is very bawdy. There's a lot of like carry on and stuff in there. There's a lot of filthy jokes, and like really dirty stuff. And it's very, it's very sexual. It's very, it's like Falstaff you've talked about before as well. Like look at those kind of characters, and it's all like, very like titillation as well, because he's trying to get a reaction. He's trying to get people's attention, and if he has to tell a dirty joke, he'll fucking tell a dirty joke. He will do that.
He absolutely will.
Like,
yeah,
he's not some like this aristocracy or anything. He was a jobbing writer. He traveled to work, had a wife and kids he had to support, and all this other stuff. Like you said, he's still a bit of a mystery for the most part, but right. He's a guy, and again, his plays were written not to be read. That's what's interesting about it. They're written purely for those actors to understand, get, memorize, and work and that's where kind of script form comes from as well, is the way he broke it down and split it all up. So, entertainment, people know this, but entertainment owes a lot to Shakespeare, modern entertainment, modern stories. You don't get The Godfather, you don't get your classic films, you don't get your Citizen Kanes without the work that Shakespeare put in, and even before
Citizen
him.
Kane, right, Richard. I mean, I almost thought about Citizen Kane as Richard III, right? I
Really?
mean, not as big of a dick, but it's
No.
very much, Schmiegel, my precious kind of stuff that Richard III.
Well, I mean, again, Orson Welles was a big Shakespeare fan as well. He did.
Of course, he did. He wrote that one movie that it was like he took 4 or 5 different plays and he puked them all into one story, right?
Chimes of Midnight. I did consider looking at that. Yeah.
Yeah, me too. I didn't watch it though.
I think he played Othello and some other dodgy stuff as well.
Othello. I've actually seen that. That's
okay.
Yep.
Yeah, I can imagine. Anyway.
So as an instructor, I do that. So I want them. I'm not trying to, because I don't teach Shakespeare. I don't teach that class, although I would love to. So whenever I use Shakespeare, a lot of times I'll end up using his sonnets more than anything in class. That's always good because they're quick, they're easy. They're not easy, but they're quick. So we can spend hours on 14 lines. So I do more of that. But again, it's all reader response. And so it's a way to connect them to it. And, it's really easy to just see the modern day adaptation. So, I have taught English literature before. So of course we would do something. So I've taught Macbeth, my favorite play. I've taught Much Ado. I've taught Henry V, just the fifth, because you can only have so much time. I went back and forth on that. But so I every time it's like, let's start with the thing. And what's a really fun way to teach Shakespeare is once you get through your reader response, okay, so what does it mean to you? Now let's set it in the modern setting, which is part of what we're going to do with this. But it's like, what is the connection to the thing? Who is the Prince Hal of today? Who is the whomever? Like, I think, like if I were to use that, the Prince Hal thing and Henry V, it's Zelensky, right? He is Prince Hal become Henry V. He was literally a comedian. When he became the president of Ukraine, people were like, this guy has a sitcom. Essentially, he was called the Jon Stewart of Ukraine. That's who he was. And people, and now all of a sudden they're like, so you are an actor. He played the president on TV, and he becomes the president. It's like right out of a Christopher Buckley novel, But then now he's Henry V, right? You thought he was a joke, but then once he ascends, he's proving everybody, he's always wearing his medium shirt and he's out there kicking everybody's ass, and he won't leave the front lines, and he's very Prince Hal. So that is a way, or he's very Henry V. So I would ask my students to do that. Like, who's the modern day equivalent? Who are our Romeo and Juliets?
Then you've got your Trump, certainly at the moment, with everything he's going on with him. He's very much a Macbeth figure, I'd say.
100% he is.
Absolutely.
Yes.
There we go.
So that's how I teach it. I think then people will get like, and then of course the stuff we're going to do today, these loose adaptations as opposed to the straight adaptations. We deliberately made the rule that it can't be, we couldn't do Baz Luhrmann's Romeo and Juliet.
No. We
couldn't do Julie Traynor stuff. Those are all great, but we don't want to do those because that's the name. It's the thing. Yeah. It's playing with it. It's playing fast and like with the language or with the scenes, or Ian McKellen's Richard III set in the Oh, that's maybe the best Richard III I've ever seen. But it's still Richard III. They called it that. You know what I mean? It's not like they didn't give it another name. So we deliberately, because I think this is another way to get them there. So one of my picks I've actually taught in class before. And so we had the conversation. I did it the other way. I used the movie in class for something. Then we worked our way backward to Shakespeare when they're like, wait, what? So that was fun too. So that's how I do it. And I love it. I think we should all be in awe of him.
Many people are. And we talked about it on the Indie Comic Spotlight when we did the Shakespeare with James, that's right. I was blanking on the name then.
It's been James Aquilone. Yep.
That's what James Aquilone, and you guys talked about Kolchak as well. I love that. So people go and check those out on the Comics in Motion feed. Go and listen. They are very, very good. All the stuff Tony does is really good, and he digs out, much like myself, he digs out those hidden gems.
I think that's what drew me to your show. I mean, I'll be honest. The thing that I found your show because of Jack, right? So like, I used, I'm not on Twitter anymore, but I was. And so I met Jack on Twitter because he was listening to our stuff. So then Jack was obviously is your number one fan. And so I was like, I trust this guy. So he was talking about you. So then I went back to the beginning and just started listening. And then, so it's all, and here we are. So like Jack always says it's because of me that he does everything, but it's you are also part of the I Am Jack's musing verse because he was inspired by you. He listened to you from the beginning. He's like that kid in Pump Up the Volume who was there on the first night listening to Happy Harry Hard On. Did you ever see Pump Up the Volume?
I did not.
Christian Slater.
Christian Slater.
Okay.
Yeah. I've heard of it though. I've heard of it, and I've heard.
I really do love it. But anyway, so it's all very cool. But what I loved about your show immediately is just that is the way that you're like. You always say a mainstream audience may find boring, which is true, but also like mainstream audience, you guys. It always gets frustrating to me when you're listening to something or you're watching something or you're reading something that's so good. And I'm not one of those people who's precious. I'm not one of those people who's like, oh, this is my band, my favorite band. I don't want anybody else to know. No, I get pissed. Like there's a few singer-songwriters who I love that nobody knows. And every time they come on, like my wife and I'll be listening and they're just on a rotation of music. And we'll be always like, oh, he should be more famous. Or why don't more people know who she is? Because we want the love spread. We want you to know about these good people. So that's what I like about your show is because you're taking the things that there's genuinely stuff I'd never have heard of. Like Maniac Cop. Of course, I knew Maniac Cop.
Sure.
But that was fun to listen to. But there's definitely been things of yours. I'm like, I had no idea that was a thing. And then you go find it and you find joy. And I don't always love it the way you love it, or I don't hate it the way Andy hates it, but I find joy in it. And so I think what you do best is you point out the art. And so what I like that we're doing Shakespeare is because you can't get more mainstream than Shakespeare, but there's also still a hate of him. So my hope with our show today, Dan, is that we're going to get people to give these movies, our 10 movies, a chance and maybe work their way backwards and be like, oh, maybe I should give that a try. And again, listen to the audiobook, get a full cast reading of a play. That's always fun. I'm with you. These were not meant to be read in static. That's part of the problem too. So, bring life, bring joy. So I'm thrilled.
I think that's the hard thing for teachers is to bring that to life in an interesting fashion and draw people in. I think a lot of the times when I was being taught Shakespeare and things, again, they would put on a film because that's how you do it. They're like, oh, we'll watch a film. Well, you'll only see certain bits, but we'll watch Roman Polanski's Macbeth. And I was like, oof. And I was like, okay.
All right. Of all the Macbeths, that's the one, huh?
Yeah, she was like, yeah, we're going to watch this one. Okay, sure. Again, this was before all the before all the controversial, pedophile stuff. Let's call it what it is.
Let's call it what it is. He's never left France again. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, I remember hearing that they gave him an award in America, and it wasn't because they wanted to give him an award. It was literally just to catch him as a pedo.
And he didn't come, though.
No, because he knew it was a trap.
He knew what it was. Yeah. He's like, why would I suddenly get this?
Anyway.
It always is weird. Anyway, that's a different show for different time. Let's move on.
That's a different show. That's enough pedos in this podcast. I remember you were speaking of teaching, you again were doing a lesson a while back, and you asked me to, I think it was about, you said, just give me 100 words on why you love Shakespeare.
We were having a conversation in my class about art, and people were arguing, and it was just a general thing. Like we watch different things and we do some creative things. And so someone on his own or her own, I don't remember, brought up Shakespeare. And I was like, hey, I know a Shakespearean actor. So, because they were like, what's the point of this? So I was like, well, let me ask. So I love that you were all in. I really appreciated it. It meant a lot.
Absolutely. And in fact, because I spent so much time considering, I didn't want to rush it, but I also didn't want to take too long on it either. So I'm just going to read out what I sent you. From an acting perspective, it's like being a historian, archaeologist, or linguistic expert all in one. You unearth new information or interpret the language in new ways and make startling discoveries about these ancient manuscripts. Breathing life into these old words gives me pride, as I'm part of a legacy of people that have passed these stories through the ages. It is a huge responsibility to ensure these stories keep being told. Learning and rehearsing Shakespeare improved many of my vocal, social, creative, and practical skills. The best acting work I've ever done is Shakespeare, and it will always will be.
I love that. Thank you for that. It is. And people need to know that. And it meant a lot to me, and the student, appreciated that, because it's, again, when you feel like it's an assignment,
Exactly.
you're like, ugh. And that's the way with anything. You got to
find the fun. Find the fun.
Yeah,
absolutely.
That's totally true.
Well, I think it is time for us to begin, Tony. We've got 10 films to get through, so I want you to go first. What is your first loose Shakespeare film adaptation?
Well, I've decided which order to go in. I have decided I'm going to go in reverse chronological order of when the film was released. So my most recent film, this says a lot about me, I guess, about how old I am, was 2005. Yikes. So this is 2005. It's a film that no one has heard of. This is actually something my wife brought home from the library one day on DVD. She's like, look at this cast. And I was like, okay. It stars, it's directed by Arthur Seidelman. It's written by Richard Alfieri, based on his own play of the same name. It stars a bunch of people may have heard of, like, I don't know, Elizabeth Banks and Maria Bello and Mary Stuart Masterson and Chris O'Donnell and Eric McCormack, Tony Goldwyn. Yeah, Rip Torn, just some folks you may have heard of. It's called The Sisters from 2005. It is an adaptation of Chekhov's Three Sisters, which is an adaptation of Lear.
So that's kind of like a 3 degrees of Kevin Bacon type.
Correct. It's 3 degrees of Shakespeare. But I mean, Chekhov admits Three Sisters is his retelling of Lear. This is his retelling of. So it's like you go from England to Russia to America. This is set on the campus, a small liberal arts college campus. So that I found that appealing. There's three sisters. Like the Chekhov one, there's the brother, whereas in Lear, there's like some bastards running around, and you're like, wait, are you that kid's son, or are you Lear? Like, you're never 100% sure who belongs to whom. And wait, are you brother and sister? What's happening? So there's some of that.
Are you a bastard or are you a bastard?
Correct. That's well said. So this is their story. Now, what this movie does differently than Lear's already dead. The dad is already dead in this, and so this is the downfall of, like, what's it like for the sister? Like, all the sisters have lived, where we know it Lear, because it's tragedy, so everybody dies at the end. But so the youngest sister, who in this movie is not called Cordelia, but is called Irene, those are the Pryors. She's getting ready to graduate from college, and there's a couple of suitors, Chris O'Donnell and grumpy Eric McCormack in this. Everybody knows him as affable Will from Will and Grace, but he plays a grump in this. And that's it. And so there's this really tense, awful stuff, and there's these three sisters who have all been living in the shadow of their father. And in this, instead of being a king, he was like the president of this university where they all work and live, and they're under the weight of him. And how do they live? And there's the brother character, and they just call him the brother. And actually, Elizabeth Banks plays his wife, and she steals the whole show like she does. She comes in with this like Queen's accent, and she just mops everybody up and is great. But the dialogue, snaps, Mary Stuart Masterson and Maria Bello are so good, and they command the screen with their presence. And it's just so good, and I think it's an amazing. This is the one that I used in class and worked my way back. I used it in a literary criticism class. We watched this film, and it was about psychological criticism and like what's going like what are the things going on with these different characters? What are the psychological illnesses they have? Then we worked our way backwards to Chekhov to Shakespeare through there, and then kind of re-envisioned what Goneril, Regan, and Cordelia are through the lens of Marcia and Olga and Irene Pryor. So the performances are amazing. I don't know anyone who's seen it besides the two of us and the people I forced to see it.
Well, I have. So it's unusual. Usually with these, I don't tend to watch other people's picks, but you were watching all of my picks, so I felt rude if I didn't attempt to watch any of yours.
Okay, yeah.
I was like, no, I'm gonna give it, because most of them I hadn't seen anyway, and most of them were on the list to research anyway. So I thought, fuck it. I didn't know at the time which ones you were picking, but when you did pick, I was like, okay. Because I pretty much had settled, I think, quite early on. But this is the one I missed out. So I know you weren't able to watch one of my picks for later on, but it was.
I've seen it before. I just didn't rewatch it.
I didn't get a chance. Yeah. We've got a bit of a heat wave in the UK, and I was just like, I don't want to do anything today. I'm just sweating.
No, it's totally fair. And this is a thinker. This would make you sweat.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to be. I didn't want to sweat any more than I was sweating, because I think I might have dehydrated myself. It was that fucking hot.
I'm so sorry. That's
it's all right. It's all right. Well, you live in Florida, so it's probably this is nothing probably to what you're used to.
But we have air conditioning here, remember?
That is a point. Yeah. That's why my office is actually better to stay in than my own flat.
Because work has air conditioning.
Well, work has air conditioning. That's right.
Nice. Yeah.
But yeah, that sounds really fascinating. I like the idea that it's kind of an educational, kind of venue, and that it's kind of because there is that kind of one-upmanship in the kind of education world. I'm sure you are fully aware of it
for sure.
And and trying to show off and trying to be the best. So I think that fits into Lear and those characters. So yeah, it does seem like a good choice for this. And again, amazing cast. I love Elizabeth Banks, Maria Bello. All those guys are fantastic. So it does sound like something I will partake in. Maybe this evening.
It's not super long, and I would say and the girl who plays Irene, because you could argue Lear is really Cordelia's play. I'm sure there's been a retelling of Lear through Cordelia's perspective. I'm sure that exists. This is the closest thing I've gotten to it. She's really young in this, younger even still than you think when he dies. And there's some, and I don't want to give too much away, but like the scars that all three sisters have put upon them by Lear are different, or put upon them by their father. But that's the way that it was for Goneril and Regan and Cordelia too, the way that their father influenced them and his outsized influence on those around him. And then the way people are throwing themselves at the Prior sisters because to like marry a Prior. Ooh, that's at this small insular university. If you're in with the Priors, you're in good. They have no choice either but to be geniuses and to be academics. And so the fact that the brother marries this like smart mouth from Queens, they are all taken so aback by Nancy is her name. And I'm just going to read this to you. This will be a line I would love for you to hear. I'm just going to read one line. I know we have the tendency to go long, but here's the line.
Go on.
This makes me laugh. So it says, I suppose I fared better. Andrew's the brother's name. This is Maria Bello character gets this. I suppose I fared better than Andrew, who had to hand his balls over to father. Only one pair allowed in the house at a time, After father died, Andrew got them back, but strangely enough, he keeps looking for someone else to give them to. Olga and I passed them back and forth for a while, but we really didn't want them. He finally found a real taker in Nancy, who'd been looking for a pair of her own for quite some time.
Oh, nice.
What a line. It
That
is
is
like,
great.
It's not Shakespearean, but it is totally Shakespeare. It's so good. And Maria Bello, she...
It does have a bit of that rhythm as well. You can hear it when you were reading it. Then I was like, it does have that iambic pentameter.
For sure. So you're going to love this movie because there's a line like that in this movie. And so you laugh and you're also like, wow, your brother's standing right there.
Ouch.
Brutal. Yeah.
But yeah, it's I was just thinking about it then, like Lear is very much like a generational trauma type story.
Yeah.
And like Disney are absolutely going to town on those and they're coming through, and not only Disney, everywhere, everything all at once. That's again more generational trauma, and it seems to be. And again, you could argue maybe something like Encanto has some Lear, some
I've
Lear
not
in
seen
there.
that yet. Yeah.
There's a few others. I won't spoil them for you, but there's elements of that, and there's I think there was one with the lady from there was a horror film with the lady from Grey's Anatomy, the Asian lady from Grey's Anatomy. I'm blanking on her name. Sandra Oh, yes. Yeah, there's something about her and her grandmother comes back. It's like a horror film, and it's kind of...
I want to see that.
And the daughter is leaving, and she's like, I don't want you to leave. I want you to stay. Let's stay together. She's going off to college, and then she's haunted by her grandmother or something.
Nice.
Yeah, so there's something like that. So again, like there's so many parallels to so many stories, so many films, TV shows, you name it, that all come up. So yeah, I think that's an excellent choice, Tony. And I am ashamed I've not watched it, but
it's okay. You will.
I will get on it. I will get on it, and then it sounds like I will enjoy it.
Yeah.
Right. Anything else you want to say about it before we?
No.
No, you're done.
I'm excited to hear you. I know what you've picked, so I can't wait to talk about them.
So which one's first? So I'm going to go. So you suggested one to me called Just One of the Guys.
Yes.
From the 1980s. And don't worry, I was already aware of it. And with this film, and I considered both of these films again for another Clone Wars comparison. However, don't worry. I've already picked a winner to this particular Clone Wars.
As you should.
As I should. So it is Amanda Bynes and poor Amanda Bynes. I loved her back in the day with the Amanda Bynes show. So it's Amanda Bynes and Channing Tatum and David Cross and Vinnie Jones in She's the Man, which is a take on Twelfth Night. And again, I think it was partly inspired by just one of the guys. It is a mid-2000s movie where Amanda Bynes' character, Viola, I think it's Viola, isn't it, in the play?
Yeah, they didn't change the names.
No, the Duke.
The
is
Duke,
called,
right, of course. Yeah.
Called Duke and played by Channing Tatum, who would also go on to play another Duke in G.I. Joe.
Wow, look at that.
Go. Connections.
He's a real American hero, that guy.
He is, even though he hated it and it was contractually obligated. Anyway, so it is basically her, the female soccer team gets cut and from their school, and she says, right, well, I want to join the boys team then. And they go, well, you girls can't play together. Lots of sexism, standard. So she decides to impersonate her brother who's away at a rock concert, playing with his band in Europe, and pretends to be him and goes to the rival school and plays soccer for their team while disguised as her brother. And she bumps into a young lady who falls in love with him. And then she falls in love with one of her soccer partners. And all of the misunderstandings occur in this kind of standard kind of Shakespearean story. I'm not a massive fan of the Shakespeare comedies, I'll be honest. I gravitate more towards the tragedies, and because I think the tragedies are universal. No matter where you are, what culture you're in, who you are, a tragedy is a tragedy. But comedies can be a bit trickier to get because, again, a lot of the language we don't know. We might not understand necessarily if that's particularly a joke. There's stuff that we still can't translate from Shakespeare. However, I think Twelfth Night is probably one of his strongest. I think it works on very many levels. And it's fun. And it shouldn't really work. I'll be honest. The film shouldn't work, but it is fun. I found myself laughing out loud, and it's not often I find myself doing that. And I'm like, it's stupid, it's funny, it's anarchic, it's silly, it's fun, it's not too dirty. It's I liked Just One of the Guys. I think it's a great little film. But it did feel a little bit seedy, a bit too adult for me. And I think this one's aged a little bit better than that one, and I think that's the only reason. And I still think the other one's a good film, Just One of the Guys, and I think people should check it out if they like this film. But I don't think it's quite as good as She's the Man. All the performances are great. David Cross is great. He's superb. There's a bit where he's being the lunch lady, and he speaks to Viola and says, have a great day, and I love students and all this sort of stuff. And then the guy goes, can I get and he goes, no. And I was pissing myself at that. And there's a line where it's like, oh yeah, she's nodding at you. Oh yeah, that's some really good nodding. She gives good nod, lines like that. And I'm like, what the fuck is this even? And it really shouldn't work. But me and my friends that watched it years ago kind of love it and kind of have a weird love for it. It's proper unusual, but it works. There's a fair bit of nudity towards the end, not actual nudity, but
right.
They're revealing themselves at this high school, and the parents are like, do all these soccer games usually involve this much nudity?
Right. I think the dad says I'm not comfortable with this much nudity. The mom, played by Julie Haggerty.
Yes, chef's kiss.
She's a gem, isn't she? She is such a comedic master. She is. I would love seeing her in this film.
I don't tell many people this, but it's an awful film, but I quite enjoy it in a way. And it's Freddie Got Fingered, and she's great in that as well.
Yeah, sure.
I kind of enjoy it on a shit, so bad.
That's
it's
Tom
kind of
Green.
good.
Yeah,
Tom Green. Yeah. I quote it a lot. There's something about it's just anarchic humor that I love.
Yeah.
But yeah, just a great cast, and there's so much fun to be had, watching this. And obviously she's got to change out the outfit, and then she goes Just One of the Guys has a similar scene where she's got to go to the showers, or the boys' showers. She's got to find out a way. But yeah, just a lot of fun. And obviously Amanda Bynes recently has gone through the ringer mentally. But I think this is genuinely one of the best things she ever did, and hopefully she'll recover and maybe she'll come back to acting and comedy, because I always thought she was incredible. And again, she was not afraid. I like when people aren't afraid to look silly or stupid, and I think she was great at that. Like, she was never like, oh, I can't look unattractive in anything. She was really good at just being like, oh, and doing all the silly, stupid clown stuff, which I loved. And again, they play up to the kind of the seedier elements and the kind of like misogyny, but then obviously they kind of roll that back, and like Duke's like a really sensitive guy. He doesn't like to talk about women in a possessive or, you know, misogynistic way.
Yeah, he doesn't like to be lewd.
Yeah,
because
exactly.
she, as Sebastian, doesn't know how to be, so she overdoes it. It's like she channels the brother in just one of the guys. I think this movie is self-aware in that, and I also think David Cross was like, you know what would be fun is if I played the principal, like Principal Flutie in Buffy the Vampire Slayer, the one who gets eaten by the jackals. The whole time he's on screen, he's like, this is just for the fans out there. This is my nod to Principal Flutie before he gets eaten by the jackals. So I think they both, and obviously Julie Haggerty is a comedic genius, and she can play everything straight. She can say these absurd things while being hysterical. So I agree with everything. And I'm with you, Amanda Bynes. And the thing, we wouldn't have Kenan Thompson without Amanda Bynes.
Yeah.
So Kenan and Kel Goodberger and Drake and Josh spun off of her Amanda show. Like, they were all on her show as actors, and they all moved on. Her comedic timing is spot on. There's
so good.
So few comedy is hard. Comedic, and that's why Julie Haggerty being in this movie, who I think has excellent comic timing, who holds Airplane together by its throat. Like, for whatever Airplane has not aged well, but she's holding on to that fucking movie. She's like, I am not going to let you go, movie, no matter how out of control this gets. Everybody thinks Robert Hayes is the straight man in that movie, but it's her. And she's so great. And so I loved seeing her in this, being that. So I think it was great, a nod to these other things. So yeah, I agree. Vinnie Jones too.
Vinnie Jones.
He's not great. He's shown up on the Staith shows, obviously on Jack's show, but I love he gets the great line at the end, like the and again, we're not. I don't know. Are we spoiling or not spoiling? But I mean,
if you know 12th Night,
right? What I love though is because 12th Night is a gender politics play. You know, that's gender bendery, but it's a gender bender that has politics in it, and that's why I think 12th Night works, or He's the Man works a little bit better, because there isn't a twin brother in just one of the guys. She's got a little brother. Right. She's not exchanging, like, her little brother's helping her, and he's funny and gross, and all the gross comes from him, obviously, in that movie. But I think because there is a twin brother, so it's more like 12th Night. But I think so I think that's why it works a little bit better. But there's the interesting gender politics between the two. She's an athlete and he's a musician, so you're flipping that around too. And that Vinnie Jones is at the end, he rips up the rule book and he says, "We don't discriminate by gender." 2006.
Ahead of its time.
Amazing. Yeah. And I think 12th Night was ahead of its time.
Yeah. Well, there we have it. And like, I think there's, obviously there's, there might be things where some communities may feel like her dressing up as a boy for this reason might be, insulting or insensitive. But I think, given what she's trying to accomplish and given what she's trying to do, I think any community, be it, cross-dressers, drag, trans people, any across the board, I think it's not a comedy that plays for the common denominator. Like, Amanda Bynes' physical comedy is impeccable as well. Like, her delivery is great, but her physical comedy is second to none.
I feel like that's her doing most of those falls.
Oh yeah. I believe it every second. I buy it. I buy the character. It's a genuine character, and again, I like that she overdoes it. She overplays the part. She's like, "Yeah, I've got a big dick."
She's so funny.
She's great. And it's like, "Yeah, what up, bro?" Yeah, like deepens her voice and everything. But yeah, I think it's a really fun film. I think there's a lot, of all ages can get out of it. And I think it's a good one for, teaching it as well. It's fun, it's light, it's not too dirty or anything. I think it's just the right level to get teenagers and teenage students into Shakespeare. I think this is a good segue into getting them interested in it.
And Channing gets the line, "Having greatness thrust upon them." He gets to say it. So he dropped it in there. I loved it. And he does it really well. Channing's, again, one of those, he's really a good actor. And it's funny too, they don't overplay on the easy thing to do too is like gay panic in this. There's a few moments of that.
Yeah,
Isn't Channing Tatum bi and he's out like in real life? Isn't that
I think so.
True. But regardless, it's they don't overdo it. A different film in a different director's hand with different actors.
Yes.
I think, because Channing, he has lots of, in the 21 Jump Street movies, there's lots of things that could easily have turned into gay panic that don't in that movie. And obviously he does the stripper movies. So he's comfortable with what he looks like and what he is. And so I appreciate that there's the gay panic is this movie in 1980, it would have been a gay panic movie. But the play isn't a gay panic play, and this is not. I love it.
I will say that in just one of the guys, there is the reveal that she's a woman and not in fact this to the best friend who she's fallen for.
Right.
And he goes, "I know, it's okay. You can tell me. It's all right. I know you're gay."
Right. That's what he thinks. I love that moment. Yeah.
Yeah. And he sensitively does it. He doesn't
he's
go
not
like,
mad. He still wants Terry's friend. Right. Yeah. Exactly.
He just goes, "I know you're gay, but I'm not into you," basically, as sensitively as he possibly can. And then she bares her breast to prove that she's a woman. She's like, it's like, those aren't breasts, they're stuffed or whatever.
Yeah.
And that's why that film's a bit more kind of seedy and stuff. And again, it's a great moment in its own right. But I think I was expecting again a bit more of She's the Man, because I'd seen that first. I think that's why I was expecting. And when I got in, I was like, "Oh, it's almost like it's more like a Porky's than a She's the Man." Really, it's more of a
because it had to be because of when it was filmed.
Exactly, 80s sex comedy, But I think it is. I think Just One of the Guys is one of the better sex comedies to not have aged as poorly. And I think it is because of the 12th Night aspect to it. I think. Yeah. So check them both out. I recommend both. What is your next pick, Tony?
Well, going in reverse order. So I've got two from 2001. So we'll stick with the we're going into tragedy. I've gotten two tragedies in a row here. I'm going to go with the Tim Blake Nelson directed, which I didn't know until I went back and rewatched it. I totally forgot. 2001, starring Mekhi Phifer, Julia Stiles, Josh Hartnett, and Martin Sheen. Oh, and don't forget a nice appearance by everybody's favorite Foggy Nelson. Eldon Henson shows up in this too. Actually, Rain Phoenix, the cast is great. Andrew Keegan, it's amazing. So it's the retelling of Othello set in a Charleston, South Carolina high school. Mekhi Phifer plays Odin. He is the only Black character there. There's
I wonder what they're adapting.
Could it be Othello? Yes. So it is Josh Hartnett plays Hugo, who is Iago, and Julia Stiles in her second turn in a Shakespearean as Desdemona. And I actually almost picked that other one, but I don't think that aged as well. I think this aged much better. It is so Othello. It is so on the nose that even later on, when there's the injury, what's the real character's name? I can't think of it. He's called Michael in the show. When he gets the wound, it just hits him in the leg. I mean, they even do that exactly from the play. And now I can't think of the real characters' names because I watched this more recently than read Othello. Anyway, doesn't matter. It's Tim Blake Nelson, the character actor, Tim Blake Nelson. He doesn't show up in this movie, which is amazing, as I didn't know he directed, really. And then I looked, I'm like, oh, he directed a ton of shit.
He did do the voiceover for the basketball games. He did the commentator.
Oh, that was him.
Because I really noticed it because I was like, this is a Tim Blake Nelson film. I wonder if I'll hear his voice. And then I heard it.
And that's where he was. Oh,
and then later you see the commentator, but it's Tim Blake Nelson's voice, and it's really off-putting.
Yeah, I guess I didn't click on that. That's funny because I was on the bike while I was watching it. John Hurd is in it, playing a dick, like he's so great at that. So it's very well done. It's very true. So if you're talking about you want to teach Othello, this is very true to the original source material while making it the commentary that it was. This is the one where you want to do political commentary because Othello, like the other one is gender politics. This is race politics. There are a handful of Black characters in Shakespeare. Othello is obviously the most famous one, although one will come up again, I assume, pretty shortly.
Maybe.
Yeah. So anyway, it's very good. And I think the performances were great. And honestly, when I went into this, I was like, I'm going to totally pick 10 things. Of the two Julia Stiles ones, I'm going to pick 10 things. And I did not. I picked this because I think her performance is more earnest here. I don't think that one aged as well. I think whatever the director made her do for that, like I think she looked underfed in 10 Things, where here she looks, and again, it's 2 years later when it's filmed and she's still playing a high schooler. The only misstep, in my opinion, is this should have been a small college instead of high school, because while Othello is obviously a lot more racy, I just think some of the things would have been more believable if these were 19, 20-year-olds instead of 17, 18-year-olds. And they do go out of their way to make sure we all know they're supposed to be 18. But whereas Channing was 26 when he filmed She's the Man. I mean, Mekhi Phifer was born looking 26. So that's also part of the problem, in Josh Hartnett too. But they're all great. Hartnett always gets the slack for being it. So we've got 2 movies in a row where they're like handsome guys who could have easily just fallen into handsome guy roles, but who challenged themselves. I mean, well, like Mekhi Phifer, he's a good looking guy. He always challenged himself. So it wasn't like he didn't ever try to go into, I'm just going to be a handsome guy movie. So I just think the performances are great. It's true to the play, and setting it in Charleston, South Carolina. And I think the greatest moment in the movie is when they're playing the regional semifinals against the other team. And they're a team of all African-American men, boys, I'm going to air quote, and he's the one black guy on this team. And so that, it doesn't go into it. It just shows, it doesn't tell. It's like, hey, maybe you should notice what this is like for him. And this really, Othello it's called Othello, but it should be called Iago, but you don't name the play after the villain. This is truly Othello's movie. You're with him on his horrible journey, whereas the whole time in the Othello play, you're constantly with Iago. Do you know what I mean? Like, you're not on his side because he's the worst villain of the.
Well, he drives the plot, doesn't he? And he's the one who's making all the speeches. He's telling you what you're doing.
Correct. He speechifies a lot.
Yeah, exactly.
He's got all the soliloquies. Well, actually, did you ever see Kenneth Branagh's Othello?
With Lawrence Fishburne.
Lawrence Fishburne?
No, I've not seen.
There's a moment in the thing. I saw it in the theater, and he's speechifying. So he's even commenting on, boy, Iago fucking talks a lot. So he's speechifying. He's looking right at the camera, and somebody walks in front of him during his soliloquy, and he grabs him and he throws him out of the way. It's such a moment of levity, which Iago never gets, nor does he deserve. But right, so because you remove all of the soliloquies, so this gives the story back to Othello, who is the tragic character, as opposed to the Iago, who's the huge dick. I really liked it. This one,
that's putting it lightly.
Oh my God, he's such a monster. He's the worst villain in all of Shakespeare too. So I think for Hartnett to be like, I want to play the worst of the worst, that was pretty ballsy of him too. So that was why I picked it, because it's all of those things. I can't recommend it enough. Holds up as far as a 2001 teen drama. Man, you could have filmed it yesterday. I think all the performances were great. I think it's shot well. It's other than there's no smartphone.
Yeah, even the fashion and stuff hasn't aged that poorly, because I guess it's
because they're on you put them in uniforms.
Exactly.
It makes it timeless because they're in the military. So you give them that, because they're at a private school, so they're all dressed the same. So it's so good. God, it's so good.
I have to agree, Tony. I got so into this. It was very intense, and it was riveting. I love the performances. I think the story's really well done. I think it has so many layers. I like seeing the slow, subtle maneuvering and the fall of Odin as a character, and then the reveal at the end is quite shocking as well, and how it all absolutely just goes to shit. It's such a great cast. Martin Sheen's in it, and again, he's not really in it much. He doesn't do much, but I'm not sure if this is in the play though. The pressure that Iago feels because of the father, I don't think that's in the play from what I remember. But I think that added a lot to his character, like that pressure to be better, to be the best, because he's always like talking down to him or saying, you got to be better, you got to do this, you got to do that. He's taking steroids, he's doing all this stuff just to impress him, just to have one day where he's like, you know what, son, great job. That's all he wants. That's all he wants. And it leads him down this fucking really dark path. And there's that line where he's like, yeah, I never have to worry about you, do I, son? And it's like, yes, you do.
You do. And that's what he wants to say. And I think actually Hartnett does the face acting in that moment where he's like, dude, pay attention. I'm right here.
Love me. That's all he wants. And obviously when again, and it's that thing where he goes, I treat him like he's my own son. It's like he's my own son. And he literally will, because he knows that's the way to get to this championship and to win the basketball games and the final and what have you. And he's literally tripping over himself to make sure that Odin makes those games. And like Hugo's like, just trying to fuck it all up all the way through. I love it. Takes its like. I think if you're sensitive about like guns in schools and stuff, it may not be the best film for you if that stuff kind of
lots of trigger warnings in there.
Yeah, by the way, there's a lot of there's rough sex going into kind of rape sort of. It's very questionable, that moment as well. So there's a few things. It is very intense, it's very full on. But I thought it was excellent. So I'm really glad you recommended that to me, Tony, because I thought it was cool.
I'm glad you liked it. Yeah, and I was like, it was one of those ones that was like in the back of my mind, and I don't think I'll watch it for another 20. I probably saw it when it came out, and it was just like that. Some movies are so good. Like I don't know that I could ever watch Black Swan again, but I'm glad I saw it. Like with Othello, with O, if you've never seen O, buckle up. It's not a light watch, but boy, is it worth watching. It is an excellent companion to the original play. Just like The Sisters is a heavy lift too. But it's worth it for you. And I think, again, if you're going to introduce what this goes back to what you're saying, Lear and Othello are tragedies, man. Fuck. And so
no holding back. Like
these two filmmakers.
When Shakespeare writes a tragedy, you're gonna get a fucking tragedy,
right? And there's no heroes, and there's no heroes in this. And so even though O is the hero, you're on his mental. He's coming undone, and the pressure. And because it's set in real time in South Carolina to be this like the black savior, as it were, of the white kid school. I love it. It's really well done. So I love the play. Like this, the movie's great.
I didn't know Tim Blake Nelson could direct, but fuck me, delivers. Buster Scruggs delivers.
Crazy. What don't you hate it when you're like, fuck you, man, save some talent for other people. By the way, he's such a great actor too. Like in the Watchmen series.
Yeah, I liked him as Samuel Stearns, the leader in the Incredible Hulk movie. I thought he was great in that. Really,
he's amazing.
Charming.
Yeah.
They should bring him back. They brought the Abomination back, so bring him back as well. He's great. Excellent choice. So next one. My next choice is, again, this is technically a comedy, but I think we've discussed this, that it's not really a comedy. It is Forbidden Planet, which is based on, loosely, The Tempest. So this is really interesting, because this film is so influential. So heavily influential on all the sci-fi shit you love. Star Wars and especially Star Trek as well. You can see a lot of the beginnings of these things, the formation of this sci-fi classic into what it would become, what it would develop and grow into. So we are with Leslie Nielsen, of all people, playing the straight man. It's not a comedy, it's just a sci-fi. And it's not play for laughs. It does have some ludicrous and ridiculous and humor and stuff, but it's not. It is a straightforward sci-fi tale in the most classic way. It is also one of the first films to have an electronic score ever, and that again is very influential.
I did not know that.
Very influential on sci-fi films going forward as well. Like you can name every single sci-fi film that has an electronic score, influenced 2001 and everything else, on and on and on and on and on. It had a domino effect, this film. So we have Leslie Nielsen. He is the captain of this ship, and it becomes they are going to Altair 4, which is a planet that they sent a colony over to develop and to live, sustain life, study, do whatever. And they're going years after to see if anyone has survived and see what's happened, just as an investigation. And they arrive and they find that there's only 2 survivors left. And dun dun dun. And it's Morbin time, because there's a Dr. Morbius who plays the role of Prospero in this story. And he has a dark secret that there is something out there dangerous that has killed all the other colonists apart from him and his daughter. I wonder why. But that I won't spoil it, but there is something out there. And this is a lot of fun. Again, we're talking about stuff that haven't aged well, but some of the sexual politics, not great. I will say.
Not great at all.
No, not great. But there is certainly, you have to kind of appreciate. I think it's one of these films you do have to see to appreciate what came after. I think it's one of those you have to go back and go, you know what, I'm going to watch this. I think you'll get some enjoyment out of it. Also features that are very popular, Robbie the Robot, who ended up being in absolutely everything in the 1950s because he was just like, he was the Baby Yoda of his day. Ended up,
oh my God,
yeah.
Totally. Yeah.
And most people will know him more popularly from Lost in Space. Right. Danger, danger, Will Robinson, danger, danger, all that sort of stuff. And he's got a wry sense of humor in this, which is great. It was like, do you even breathe? And he's like, I do not. It promotes rust. This is
so funny. He's not like that in Lost in Space.
No, it's just this dry humor. It's brilliant. Everything. And he plays the role of Ariel, the fairy in the story.
Right.
And we also have the monster from the Id.
Well, does he though? Let's talk about that. Is he the role of Ariel or is he Caliban?
Well, I see the monster of the Id as Caliban because it is quite literally a monster.
That's true. That's fair.
But
he's more of a slave.
True, but Ariel.
You know what I mean? Like
Ariel is.
They both are slaves. That's totally true.
Slaves.
Yeah, it's fair. It's fair. Okay.
And I think he transports, he does things, he helps, he's
much more useful.
He's also a lot quicker. Like he's quite fast, obviously with his little buggy and stuff, so he can whip round. So I see more of as an Ariel, but
totally fair.
But I can see why. And then obviously you've got Miranda as Altera, who's the daughter, and then you've got Ferdinand, who is Leslie Nielsen's J. John Adams, the most American sounding name.
You could not get more of that, yeah.
America. But yeah, I really appreciate the film. I think it's gorgeous. The special effects are incredible. The sense of
unbelievable.
They were Oscar nominated, the effects, and I can see why. I can absolutely see it. I'd like to know who actually won the special effects that year, because I'm blown away by some of the stuff they did. Some of it doesn't. I think when the tiger comes on and Altera is near the tiger, that's the one that looks the most wobbly, I think, out of the effects. But the monster from the Id is incredible. The footprints it leaves when they go into the Krell. And their underground base. Again, I won't spoil it entirely, but they go into this deep underground kind of chasm. And how reminiscent is that underground base to the Death Star?
Oh my God, it's crazy. Yeah, Star Wars and Star Trek. And you sent me the link of how this inspired the both, because they do the beam. They beam up. Yeah, the ray guns that they have are very
that thing that the shield generator that Obi-Wan Kenobi turns off is there. You can see it. It's basically the same, but it's incredible, and they take it really seriously as well. And it's not fantasy. It's all based in science fiction. It's science. They are using science to solve their issues. They are explaining it through scientific means. It's not like, oh well, he's an alien and he has powers. This is how this works. The nuclear fission, radiation, cobalt, all this other stuff they're throwing around. It is actual science to a point. Obviously, it's still science fiction. But there we go, and that is it's an incredible film. It's a startling film to think it was done in the 50s. It's in color, and it's just the cinematography is amazing. The sets, you name it. I just love it. Again, it is a very loose adaptation, but it's a lot of fun, and I think it's great, and it's definitely one people should see.
I had not seen it before this watch, and so I was like, I'm going to watch that, and I'm glad I did. Everything you said, I'm not going to waste everybody's time having me just repeat what Spider-Dan just said, but I would say to you all, if you've not seen this, watch the fucking shit out of this. It's in CinemaScope. Again, the cinematography is beautiful. I do think, well, this is the question though, because we were going back and forth. So So is The Tempest the first drama? Did Shakespeare also invent the dramedy? This is considered a comedy because there's a wedding at the end.
Happy ending, yeah.
Right? But not really. Just because there's a wedding at the end doesn't mean it's a happy ending. It could be a shotgun wedding. And now Miranda and Ferdinand, it's not that. It's very love at first sighty. But there's not a lot of jokes. I mean, Ariel's the funniest thing in it. Caliban is I'm sorry, slavery isn't really super funny to me.
You've got the drunks. You've got the drunks as well. Obviously,
no,
they're quite funny. I'd say
and
they're
there's
the
a
comic
drunk
relief.
in this.
Yeah. Yeah, there is. Yeah.
I mean, really, you say it's a loose adaptation. I say it's pretty fucking
maybe.
close. I mean,
thinking about it, and again, like the whole plot is driven by Prospero, and he wants revenge.
Right.
Obviously, with this, it's like, oh, they're coming anyway, but then there's sabotage of the ship, so they do get shipwrecked, and they're bringing about, and it's him just kind of. It's still him to a point. Again, I won't spoil it, but yeah, I think maybe you are right. There's a bit more you can, if you really dig into it. I think there is a bit more.
Yeah, it's there. It's very much there.
Yeah. I never when I there was the first Shakespeare play I did was The Tempest, and I never saw it as a comedy. I just saw it as
funny.
and I just saw it as a Shakespeare play, and I played Antonio as the villain of the piece.
Right. Yeah.
So
you really cranked it up to 11.
So I was like, I got an acting award for it. In fact, and I beat out 3 other years to get that acting award, and I was like, really? And my dad found out, and he's like, why didn't you tell me? And I was like, because my stepfather at the time was there, and he saw me get the award and stuff, and I didn't see him, so it was like, oh yeah, and got the award and stuff, and it was like best actor and stuff. I've not won many awards since for my acting, but that's not what it's about. It's not about the accolades. It's about the work and
it's about the work.
Story.
And I think it would have been fun. I think playing a baddie is hard, and I think it's fun. And I think he's a good baddie, but you could argue that Prospero's the villain. I always argue Prospero's the villain of the piece. Because Miranda is also a slave. Like, he's into slavery. He's lied to her. Also, at the end, she's 15 at the end. Now, the woman who plays her in the movie, not
she
15.
Is absolutely
also,
not 15.
Stunning.
Gorgeous.
What a stunning woman. But there is definitely some bad politics in this. But I enjoyed the shit out of it. I'm disappointed in myself for having not seen it sooner. I will not wait the rest 49 more years until I watch this again. I will watch it again. I own a copy now.
Fantastic. Right. Great on you. I think that's great. At least I've turned you onto it at the very least. So hopefully I'll turn other people onto it. But what's next, Tony?
Well, we're going to go same year, 2001. I got my 2 teen ones back to back. This just happened to be because I'm going in reverse order. They're both released in 2001. This one I just stumbled across as I was doing the research for this. Again, I had a totally different thing in mind. This movie did not do well. This was a bomb. It is called Get Over It. It's from 2001. It's directed by somebody called Tommy O'Haver, whom I don't know. It stars top billing Kirsten Dunst in this film. Cool. Ben Foster, who's never been 19. I'm sorry. He and Emma Thompson were born 50. There's just a fact. Okay. A couple of people were born 50 years old, and Ben Foster is one of them. So it's, even though he's got all of his hair in this, that's the only, to me, weakness of this film. Melissa Sagemiller, I've never seen her in anything before, but she's great. Cisco, they're trying to make Cisco an actor. It didn't work, but he's having so much fun in this movie. Shane West, Colin Hanks, Zoe Salanda, Mila Kunis, Susie Kurtz, Ed Begley Jr., Carmen Electra, Vitamin C, the singer, makes an appearance. And that's when I knew 5 minutes into this movie that I was going to love it. And most importantly, as your role as the King of the Fairies, Martin Short.
Yes, of course. Yeah, I forgot.
Oh my God. So this is a comedy. It's a retelling of Midsummer Night's Dream. And so the opening scene, Ben Foster is playing Burke, and he's in love with Allison. So these are all your characters from Midsummer's Night's Dream. It's a crazy thing. And I don't know, maybe we could argue Martin Short is the Puck character, but I think Cisco is supposed to be Puck. I don't know. I feel that Martin Short's supposed to be the Oberon character.
If I remember rightly, Cisco is quite shy and
that's
quietly
true.
spoken.
No, that is, he falls in love with Mila Kunis later. Yeah. So it's a tough. It doesn't really matter who the Puck is, because there is a character playing Puck. Because this is one of the ones where they do the play within the play, where they're putting on their own version of Midsummer's Night's Dream while they're doing Midsummer's Night's Dream. So the opening of the movie, spoiler free as much as I can. I just stumbled across this on Hoopla Digital, the unofficial sponsor of Indie Comic Spotlight. I watched it. I loved it so much I watched it again right away. I loved it. I cannot tell everybody how much fun this was. So Ben Foster's character, Burke, he gets broken up with by Allison. And then as he's walking home in slow motion, Vitamin C comes out and sings Captain and Tennille's Love Will Keep Us Together behind him as he's walking. And like the FedEx guy and the UPS lady, they have a dance, and there's a marching band, and everybody's happy except for him as he's walking home with his breakup box. And it's like, oh, this movie knows what it is. And then it is that the rest of the time. I love a movie that knows what it is. And so Martin Short is the director of the play, and he's written a musical version of Midsummer's Night Dream. And so they have to do the play within the play, and Burke's character has to try out. And then there's a giant dick played by Shane West, who's great with a fake accent the whole time. It is a delight. It is a delight. Colin Hanks plays Felix Woods, who's the older brother to Kirsten Dunst's Kelly Woods. And so then all the craziness. So there is a character who just is Puck in the play, who may be the Puck, because everything kind of goes sideways from there. I mean, to me, I've never acted, but that would be the dream role, Puck. I know you were Oberon. No offense. And Oberon's awesome, by the way. But I mean, like, Puck's the role. Puck's the most fun. Puck's having more fun than anybody.
I mean, arguably, I think it's Puck and Bottom you want to play in Midsummer Night's Dream.
Bottom.
Yeah, it's got to be one of those two. My friend recently, Nathan, who's been a guest on the podcast, just did he's currently doing a touring Midsummer Night's Dream.
Yeah.
And he's Bottom in that, and he's fantastic. And he was Bottom in our version of Midsummer Night's Dream as well.
Nice.
And
Colin Hanks plays the Bottom.
Yeah.
Because he ends up with Carmen Electra at the end.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah. So, I just think it's just hysterical. I had no idea it was even a thing. What a cast, like right at the edge of their careers. Kirsten Dunst, definitely the lead. She sings. She's got a decent set of pipes in this. But Martin Short, he's pretending he's 35 in this, like the character is. I love when Martin Short is off the leash. And then Swoosie Kurtz and Ed Begley Jr. as Burke's parents are really funny. They have their own like sex positive TV show. And then at the end, they do another dance number where Cisco sings, Cisco and Vitamin C sing at the end. I just thought if in a different time, Kylie Minogue would have played the Vitamin C role, like, right? It's the same kind of vibe, but I had no idea what I was getting myself into. I was like, okay, I'm just gonna watch it. It's called Get Over It. And my favorite comedy is actually Much Ado. But I think, while Twelfth Night, everything you said, I think what I love about Midsummer's Night Dream is it knows what it is. It's silly. And, when it was thrown into the Sandman verse, that just made it move a little bit closer to my heart, there too. So I just think if my favorite is always Much Ado, but I think my favorite to watch, like if I were to be in, would be to be this one. And this just captures the zaniness, and it's a teen comedy. It's totally PG-13. Apparently there was a rated R version of this that the director fought against, that the producers wanted, and they went back and forth. And that's why Carmen Electra is in it, because there was a lot more to see, we'll say, during the Carmen Electra I'm a klutz scenes. But it was just a fun. Now, you had seen this before? I
have, yeah. So yeah, I remember watching it. I think we watched it when we were doing the play back in, or it must have been 2013, 2020. No, 2011, probably 2011. But yeah, so I think we watched it. I don't remember being that keen on it.
You even told me that. You were like, and I was like, I'm going to watch it anyway. And then I really fell in love with it.
Yeah, fair enough. I again, there's a lot of films that I like to go back to, because when I'm not really sure, I'm like, did I like that? Did I not like that? I'm not sure. Or I always think films deserve like a second watch. Most films, not things like Requiem for a Dream or something like that. You can see that
one and done.
Fine. Yeah, that's fine. I'm never going to. It's not one I want to return to, that world at any point soon. So yeah, I think it is one that I need to revisit. I do remember I do remember the cast being really good. I remember, I was a big Spider-Man fan, so I was like, oh yeah, Kirsten Dunst. Oh yeah, she's really attractive. So I do remember that sort of thing. Again, I think as a teenager, I was probably put off by the fact that it's probably based on a Shakespeare play at that time, because I was trying to be cool, and not acting and not doing that sort of stuff. So I want to get girls. Girls don't like Shakespeare plays, but
yes, they do.
They fucking well do, yeah. But yeah, it was. I remember watching it. Again, me and Nathan watched it, and yeah, I was like, it's fine. It's not awful. It's not great. I think we may have watched something like 10 Things About You, 10 Things I Hate About You, and I think I might have gone, well, that's the one. I think
at the time I didn't even know this one existed. So I think this got sucked up in between the 10 Things and were out. This was just another one of those, and I think. I mean, I loved it. Obviously, 2 of those 3 made my list. And I thought for sure 10 Things was going to be. I don't think 10 Things aged well. I think what happened is in 10 Things, you got Larry Miller stealing the show. He's the David Cross role, right? You've got Julia Stiles, who was the it girl at the time, and Heath Ledger, you handsome devil. You look at him and you're like, of course he's Joker. Look at that smile. Like, every performance is great, Joseph Gordon-Levitt. It's an excellent cast, but I don't think it holds up. But in the moment, I think it's one of those ones. So I would like for you to, and again, everybody go, it's on Hoopla Digital, get over it. It's called, I totally get what you're saying, Dan, because on paper, this isn't very good. But I think, and honestly, Kirsten Dunst would have kept me away from it. She was cast as Claudia. And no matter who got that role was going to piss me off. And so I held that against her. But then when I went back and recently rewatched Interview with the Vampire, I'm like, holy shit, of course she got that role. She's amazing. She should have been nominated for an Oscar for that role.
I totally agree.
But in the moment, no one could be Claudia to me because I love that book so much. So I held it against her, I was just a dumb kid.
I mean, hold it against the casting director, like if anything.
Yeah, no, I know. I was dumb. I was just being dumb. But then I've reevaluated her. She's very good.
She's incredible. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember somebody on one of the Discord chats, I think it was on the VHS Strike Back Discord chats, they were like, why didn't you pick Interview with a Vampire? And I was like, I love it. It's so good. However, once Tom Cruise leaves the film, I lose all interest.
Because Brad Pitt didn't want to be there, and you can tell.
Yeah. I like Tom Cruise. It's very rare that I see Tom Cruise absolutely like chewing the scenery and enjoying it and reveling in it. It's very rare. It's like Tropic Thunder. Like when he goes for it, I love it. But instead of playing these safe, hero roles and stuff,
Magnolia is his greatest performance.
Yeah, and I love Antonio Banderas, and I love all the stuff, and I love the idea that Claudia gets destroyed by the sunlight and everything, and that guy he cuts that guy in half with a scythe, which is amazing. But after that, don't give a fuck. I just don't care. I just don't care once Tom Cruise is gone. I was like, that's my biggest problem with that film is the second half. It's the same with Full Metal Jacket. Once they're out of the training, I kind of don't give a fuck.
I've never seen it.
Yeah, I can get why you wouldn't want to see it. The second half is good, but it pales in comparison with the first half, and all the Ali Ermey and Vincent D'Onofrio stuff. That's what people remember. People don't remember the second half of the film.
Oh well, and Vincent D'Onofrio, he's
exactly
great.
Great. One of his best, most iconic roles as well. But yeah, no, you know what? I'll go back and I'll watch both, and I'll report back to you which one I prefer, because I'd like to reevaluate both.
Yeah, and again, I just thought, with that movie, because I'm on record of telling you how much I love Sharknado because it knows what it is, and this movie I didn't know what it was, and then I'm like, oh, this movie knows what it is. It's and then there's the dance number at the end too. Do you remember? Oh, it's so good. So I would say everybody go watch it. Cisco gets to sing, Mila Kunis, young Zoe Slaughter, the cast bangs. Everybody goes on to greater things, and Kirsten Dunst is top billing for a reason. And again, just get past the fact that Ben Foster is technically, I looked, he was 22 when they made this film. Kirsten Dunst was 19 when they made this film. But Ben Foster looks like Ben Foster. Can't help it.
Yeah, he does look quite old. He's
like
got
what he looks like in Hell or High Water. That's what he always looks like to me. And that movie is special. I love his performance in that film. But teen sex comedy, Ben Foster, you don't see those. But it's excellent.
I wouldn't, if I was a young lady at the time and I'm like, oh, who's the hot new thing, or a gentleman who likes gentlemen, I wouldn't go for Ben Foster.
Correct.
Like, just the way he looks, you just think, nah, not quite.
He's a grumpy old man. Yeah, give me 20 years and we'll see. Maybe I'm into grumpy old men. Yeah, 100%.
Well, I think he's aged into his looks, definitely.
He has. He's great. I didn't even know he was a teen actor. That's why I was like, just get past it. Colin Hanks is great. It's fun.
Yeah, definitely. And you were saying again, going back to Shakespeare, you were saying that the play within a play. Where did that originate?
Exactly.
Hamlet. The play is the thing to kill the king, catch the king, whatever the line is. He did that. Like it all comes back round. It all, no matter what, however wacky or weird or out there your film is, there's going to be some part of storytelling that goes all the way back to that weird man with that weird collar on,
100%.
And the weird beard, the weirdy beardy. He's the man. Even if he did or did not write those plays,
he did.
Who cares? At this point, it's the work. It is the work that is there, and that's what we've got to remember, and that's what we still enjoy to this day. Okay. Rightio, that was great. I'll move on to mine. So mine's an interesting one. Again, high school. We do see a lot of these kind of ones that are in high school, but I do think it works a lot of the time. Again, there's a lot of the politics, the social politics. You know, you can play with the racial politics, the gender politics. There's a lot of stuff you can do, and also it gets kids interested or young people interested in Shakespeare. I think when they realize things are like that. So we are going to talk about one of. It's not really a cult film anymore, but I think at the time it was. It's Mean Girls. But you ask, what play Shakespeare is Mean Girls based on? Well, it's based in history as well. It is Julius Caesar. And there's a lot of references within the thing that is quite clearly, it's like, here's what we're doing. Obviously, Gretchen, quite funnily in the class, they are doing Julius Caesar. She talks about Julius Caesar and then actively compares her to Regina George, who is the meanest of the girls, of those mean girls, and
of them all.
And I love this film. I think it's great. I think I think everybody loves it. Anybody, I think if I'd be untrustworthy if someone said, I don't like Mean Girls. You know what I mean? I think there's something for everybody. Yeah, some things haven't aged well. Fair enough. We notice this and we call those things out. But
fat shaming, for example.
Fat shaming.
That doesn't hold up well.
There's a long list of stuff.
Yeah. Amy Poehler's horny mom.
Yeah, and the dog biting her hard nipples, all that sort of stuff. Yeah, the cool mom. I'm the cool mom. All that sort of stuff, and the body shaming and the insults and the, again, like people, stuff like this it's funny to kind of look back on, because I'm hoping high school isn't as bad as it used to be for like people, for my age, your generation, my generation. I'm hoping that we're a bit more kind of accepting of people and cultures, a bit more sensitive as well, because obviously there's so much stuff going on, and anyway. But Mean Girls takes that idea and runs with it. So it takes the idea of the social climbers, the one-upmanship, the backstabbing, it's all there. And there's even another line.
The front stabbing.
Yeah, it's a lot of front stabbing.
Yeah.
So much front stabbing. And like, I think Gretchen says again, another line where, or somebody, no, that's it. Janice says it. And Janice goes, Regina George is a dictator. He's a literal dictator, like she describes as such. I think she's holding a Roman sword when she says it as well.
I believe so. Yeah,
I believe that's another thing as well. And she obviously plays the role, and she basically creates the drama, gets Brutus or Cady to basically get involved with Caesar, get in there, work the magic, that's her Brutus in the play has this social standing, and that's his currency, his social currency. In the social currency Mean Girls, it's Cady's looks, because even Regina goes, oh, you're pretty. Yeah, okay, thanks. Oh, you agree you're pretty then, all that sort of stuff. So there is that. And again, it's almost like the undercover cop who gets too into the role and is like, whose side are you really on? So again, that's owed to Shakespeare. Again,
100%.
All goes back.
I like the gender flipping of it too. Wasn't this based on the book Queen Bee?
Yes.
So they lean a little harder in the book than they do. But I if you called it Queen Bees, it wasn't going to work. Like Tina knew she had to rename it Mean Girls.
Yeah, and but the fact that they put that influence, it's like your sister's Chekhov. It's a play.
Exactly.
It's based on that and based on this. So
exactly.
But it works in so many ways. It adds so many more layers to it, and again, you paint it with this high school comedy brush, but it's still quite horrifying, the things that are done and things that are said. And even here's another one as well. So when Regina gets hit by the bus, spoilers. She gets hit by
Sorry, everybody.
Spoilers, if you've not seen Mean Girls.
If you didn't know that Caesar died, also, by the way.
Also, yes. Caesar
Spoilers.
Spoilers.
Something in March. I'm not sure exactly
what
that was about. Yeah.
Yeah, the Ides of March, eh? But there you go. And when she comes back, she survives. She doesn't die, because that would be maybe a bit too mean. I don't know. Maybe she dies in the book. Possibly. I'm not sure.
I've not read the book. I should read it.
Next, you'll have to tell me. You'll have to tell me.
I will. Yeah.
But she comes back with this kind of neck brace, head brace, and the brace doesn't look unlike a laurel wreath.
It looks very much like one.
There you go. And then the destroying of the tiara and the sharing of that. Again, the people, lend me your ears.
Yeah.
All that sort of stuff. Let's slip the dogs of war. They do really let slip. There's a lot of slipping going on.
Yeah.
And I love it. Some of it's such a quotable film as well. And I'm going to talk again about another very quotable film later on.
Sure.
But yeah, again, absolutely is a classic. Like, again, I can't find many people that would disagree. But I thought it was a really interesting one to bring to this discussion, because I don't think a lot of people see that parallel between the play and between obviously the film as well. And Tina Fey is obviously an amazing writer. I love Kimmy Schmidt. I love 30 Rock. You name it. She's fantastic. And I think the role she plays in this is really, it's a really honest, unique, interesting role. And apparently it had a lot of significance for her, because she's taught in schools and saw this type of thing going on.
She's admitted she was a mean girl too.
Oh, that was it. Yeah,
so I think she wanted to put herself into place a little bit, be chopped down just a bit. Yeah.
Yeah, I love it, and I think it really works. And I think, again, if you're teaching it, this is how you get people interested.
Oh, 100%. And I just read Quirk books last year. Quirk did Much Ado About Mean Girls.
He was saying, yeah.
So Quirk does those lists. Like, they've redone all of the Star Wars movies as Shakespeare. It's amazing. And that guy, James was telling us, remember James Eklund, that guy's doing a story for him.
Oh, yeah.
So, but the everything you say is true. This is a classic. This is another one of those. You had Amanda Bynes and Lindsay Lohan, and Lindsay has made her. She's come out the other end. She lives over there.
Yeah.
She's acting on the West End. She was always, again, very good. I think Amanda has better comedy timing than Lindsay, but I think Lindsay's probably a better all-around actor. And she pulls, in this movie, shows that, because she's got to be not just goofy. She's got to be conniving, and you got to see her. Katie transforms. I mean, that's the whole part of Caesar, is that the lure of the kingdom, the lure of the queendom, being the queen bee, the lure of being the Heather, which is also another, maybe we could have done two for this, because Heather's is clearly the influence to this. But the lure of that, of being the one in charge, is what allows you to want. And once you have the power, you change. And so Katie goes through some shit, right? And so I think you see, what does Brutus go through? And then, of course, you could. I never saw Mean Girls 2. Is it Antony and Cleopatra? I don't know. I can't imagine it is.
I don't know.
They made another movie.
I'm all right. I think I'm good.
We'll pass on that. I know Tim Meadows shows back up in it, because
we should get Jack to watch it, because he will watch Mean Girls 2. If he watches Mean Girls, he has to watch Mean Girls.
I know. I feel bad for him. I don't want him to have to watch that. Don't watch it, Jack. Don't watch Mean Girls 2. Don't. I'm sorry I brought it up.
Do it. Bring it up. I want a review.
But I agree with everything you say. I think this, if you're going to teach it, because this is all about like clever, and this is like what adaptation is about, right? You take something and you turn it on its head, and you distill it down to what it is, and it's all about greed, and it's all about power. And again, Caesar is totally applicable today. We talked about Macbeth. You can talk about your Richards. Man, your Caesars, they're out there. Power hungry assholes.
It still works. Like all these stories are, they're timeless. They never truly age. There's always something to get out of them. These stories are, repeating in real life again and again and again. That whole thing. Another thing as well is Janus obviously plays the Cassius role, the kind of manipulator and the focal point of bringing Caesar down, and then again compares Cady or Brutus to Caesar, like, you're becoming just as bad as Caesar. Right. You are the worst. Why? And then obviously Janus and the Roman god Janus is the god of being two-faced.
Nice. Look at you.
Look at that. See,
That's amazing. I love that.
Oh, teaching.
Ooh.
I'm teaching now. I'm
Now you are.
I'm taking you to school. I'm taking you
Take me to school. That's right.
Right. What's next for you? So this is your
Well,
your second
number
to
4.
last.
Yeah. So we'll stick with the histories. This is my only history on the list. 1991. I saw this in the theater, and I don't know how, because I live close enough to Ann Arbor. That's probably why. Now I am on record of saying Keanu Reeves is fine. He knows who he is, but the star of this film, River Phoenix, gone too soon. Say what everybody loves his brother, and I'm saying his brother's a fine actor, but River Phoenix and Rain. I have 2 Phoenixes because Rain was in, is in Get Over It. Or is in O. I mean, she's in O. Rain Phoenix is in O. So I've got River Phoenix in this one. My Own Private Idaho, written and directed by Gus Van Sant, based on Henry IV, Part 1 and 2, and Part 5. It's the story of a narcoleptic young prostitute named Mike. He's the Poins character from the Henry plays. And then Scott Favor, what a name, is Keanu Reeves, and he plays Prince Hal. And then William Reichart plays the Falstaff character, Bob Pigeon. And boy, I don't even know what to say about this film. I saw it. I didn't know what I was into. I just went and saw it because it was a River Phoenix movie. And it was Gus Van Sant. And I love Drugstore Cowboy. I don't know how you feel about Drugstore Cowboy, but I've still
not seen it. When I was a teenager, I went to buy it, and then I just never did for whatever reason. I think I chose something else. I think I chose something like Johnny Handsome with Mickey Rourke. I think I bought.
I don't think I've
like
seen that. Okay, well, I love me some Drugstore Cowboy. I mean, Matt Dillon and Kelly Lynch, and it's very good. And so I was like, all right, I'm gonna see whatever this guy's up to. And it was this. So I went because of River Phoenix and Gus Van Sant, and I got this thing. And then I'm like, wait, that's Shakespeare. And so here he is. He's doing these lines from Henry V. They drop right in. So Scott Favor is the Prince Hal character, and and Bob is the Falstaff character, and Mike is the Poins character, which is really fascinating because in the plays, Poins disappears. He's not in Henry V, and that actually Falstaff isn't technically in Henry V. Everybody thinks he's there. His funeral is in there, right? But you never see Falstaff. But in most of the movie adaptations, we see, including this one, Hal's Henry IV dies, and so Henry V is at the funeral at the same time. So it's very well done. In the play, that's not a thing. And then Poins is mentioned in passing in Merry Wives of Windsor, which happens between Henry IV and Henry V, right? Merry Wives of Windsor is happening in between there when Falstaff before he dies. So anyway, Poins, you're like, who the fuck is he? He's the guy. He's Hal's right-hand man. He's his Robin. He's his, he's just his guy. He's there to help him. And the reading of this is that Poins is in love with Hal. And so it's such a fascinating read. Then you go back and you reread the Henry IV, and you're like, well, because when you read it, you're like, why does he go along with all this stuff he goes along with? Poins, he drags him. He makes fun of Falstaff. He does these things. Like, Poins loves Falstaff, but then Hal's like, no, let's make fun of Falstaff, and let's do this thing, and let's trick him in the robbery scene and all that other stuff. The robbery scene in this is spectacular. It is my favorite scene in the film, and it is heartbreaking. It is devastating to the Bob character, and you see Mike, the narcoleptic prostitute, go through some shit there. So I just can't tell you enough that River Phoenix performance is stunning. You see this and you're like, this guy's a fucking star. He carries this movie across the finish line. So it's my final 2 picks are kind of alternate versions of the story where the real play happens. So this is that one. And I just thought it was an interesting take to be like, Gus Van Sant asks us to say, why does Poins, you forget about him, but he's asking us, why does he do, like with your Caesar, the reason our main 4 characters do what they do is on full display, right? We understand how the 4 girls work and their dynamics. You get it, jealousy and pettiness, and same thing with Heather's. But in Henry IV, you don't get. So for Gus Van Sant to go, what's up with that guy? And Gus Van Sant is a gay man who, has gone through some shit in his life. He's like, well, what have I done for love? And retelling Henry IV, which is my favorite of the histories, by the way. I like Julius Caesar a lot, but those 3 together are their best. In my 4th, Part 1, Part 2, and Henry V. I've read those more often than anything, probably even more than Macbeth, which is weird because I think they're so juicy. There's a lot going on. But to go back and review that through the lens of, oh, it's a love story, because there's a line in this film where Scott says to Mike, House, he's like, I can get paid to have sex with men, but I don't love them. I only love when it's only, and Mike is so deflated in that moment, River Phoenix's face. And then there's like a weird incesty thing that happens in here with his brother, and so there's all kinds of stuff. But again, he's leaning in. There's air quotes incest in Shakespeare too. You know, like brothers and sisters, and obviously lots of cousin kissing and stuff too. So it's just fabulous. I can't get over. It is not for the faint of heart.
No,
it is. Flea shows up. A young Jim Caviezel, as you mentioned, Brian Wilson as essentially himself in here. The performances are great. Udo Kier is the creepiest of creeps.
I almost sent you a message going, of course Udo Kier is in this.
Of course he is. It was like he just showed up and they're like, you just go call yourself Hans instead of Udo, go. He's amazing. I can't get rewatching it. Holds up. Fabulous film. Fabulous retelling of my favorite history. And I can't. And you watched it, so tell me, what did you think?
I really enjoyed it. I do think it. I think maybe your last two choices are ones I'd actually prefer to be in. I think you were talking earlier about
sure
being in them and performing them and having, because they look like they're having a ball in your last two choices. All the actors look like they're having the best fucking time of their lives.
Yeah.
But sometimes I don't think that always translates. I think I really enjoy this. I think it's a good LGBTQ film, LGBTQ plus film. I think there's a lot in here. It is a bit dark. It is a bit depressing. It's probably the one that's, out of all of the ones we've picked, I think it's the one that is probably the most Shakespearean in the dialogue. Like the dialogue, I mean, I'll be honest, I've not read the fourth. I've read Henry V. I've not read the fourth, parts 1 or 2, but it's definitely the one that feels like the way they deliver it and the way they're expressing themselves. It is a bit out there. It is a bit theatrical, and the dialogue is a bit like, oh yeah, and it kind of has that rhythm. So I did feel that. I think it's really fascinating kind of indie film. I think with indie films, I'm very kind of on the fence. I think sometimes I'm like, I love this, and other times I'm like, yeah, not for me. And I think initially I was like, I don't know about this one, but I think by the end I was totally sucked in, and I was like,
it's slow. Yeah, it's a slow hour 47, but you are right. You're there with him because there's a narcoleptic in it. So you have to watch him fall asleep a lot. And it's brilliant. It's a brilliant device. Gus Van Sant is such a great writer, because how do you get from place to place? It doesn't matter because Mike's asleep and he's our point of view character. So there's one time you see, 2 times, I guess, when you actually see Scott carry him. But most of the time he just wakes up wherever he is. Yeah.
I thought it was really, really fascinating, really unique kind of story, a really unique set of characters, and I think with all these films as well, there's all these little cherry kind of these little Easter eggs you'll see, like they're drinking the beer and the beer's called Falstaff and things like that. Which is
real beer.
Yeah. There you go. There you go, and it works. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. I don't think it's totally my bag, I'll be honest, but I did enjoy it, and I appreciated that River Phoenix was amazing in it. I mean, you watch it for that performance alone.
When he died, one of my friends, I was just talking. So my best friend from high school, Rebecca, she lives out in Colorado, and she was out there when River Phoenix died. I was on my undergrad, and she was living out at her undergrad out in Colorado. And she wrote me a whole long letter lamenting the death of River Phoenix. And she wrote right in there, she's like, what have we lost? Like, he's our voice. He's us. He's our generation. He's the Gen X person. And she even said, I don't mean this, but why couldn't it have been one of those new kids? She wrote that right in there. Like, New Kids on the Block. I was like, well, but she was also a heartbroken 21-year-old. Like, oh my God.
Fair enough.
He's that good. I mean, say what you want about Joaquin. He's great. But I'll tell you what, River Phoenix, there's not a movie that he's in that he's bad. Even if he's in a bad movie. I even thought
Keanu Reeves was pretty good as well.
He is really good in this.
I thought
very good in this.
Yeah, I actually thought he was really good. I quite like Keanu. I don't think he's the greatest actor in the world, but I do appreciate some of the films and some of his roles. And I thought this was one of his best, genuinely one of his best. And it's quite an interesting again, it's a very odd film. It's very, it's very art house, I'd say. If you like, be prepared. It is a very much an art house film. Again, like you said, there's a dreamlike logic to it as well, with the searching of the mother and everything. But it is fucking hard going, and it's not in like, oh, it's a slog, but it's hard going as in the subject matter is quite disturbing. And I did quite enjoy every time he goes to like one of the Johns, let's call them. And they're not even really having sex. They're just like, clean for me.
Yeah.
Watch me
he makes him,
dance.
watch me dance. They're
It's like,
all
okay,
so creeps. Yeah.
okay,
It's great though.
But
And
again,
Flea.
Again, Flea's always good in my book. But yeah, and again, it's it's one of those rare occasions where we see some gay, like LGBTQ plus content, and it's very rare in a mainstream film, even today, that we see that sort of thing. So it's really good. It was really interesting, and it is kind of a disturbing kind of story in that. But yeah, genuinely great performances. You might not like the film itself. I think you've got to appreciate the performances and what they are delivering performance-wise, emotionally, and everything. I think it's a really, really strong film. So yeah,
because
excellent.
Prince Hal goes on this journey, right? And I know so Prince Hal has to grow up, and it's all a choice. And that's Prince Hal is one of those characters to me that Shakespeare, we all make a choice. When are we going to stay a kid, and when are we going to become an adult? And Hal has a real specific plan in mind. And so this is if you're going to teach the Henrys, because those are 3 plays, you can get the gist of it here. Because Henry V is amazing. It's the one that people know the best, but you don't get the full backstory. Like that's part of why Falstaff isn't in that. So, Falstaff's funeral doesn't mean as much in Henry V without fourth part 1 and 2, but it's just great. It's again, character driven stuff. So I could talk all day. Yeah. Sorry.
It's a very character driven film, but that's what you're there for. Like, forget the plot, forget the meandering storylines, whatever. The main plot is basically he wants to find his mom. He's never met his mom or can't remember his mom. He wants to meet his mom. That's all you need to know, and just watch it for the genuinely jaw-dropping performances in it. I think it was such an incredible and beautiful film as well. The cinematography is fucking incredible. So just check that out. Just brilliant, beautiful
film.
On
Hoopla Digital.
There you go, Hoopla Digital. If you've got that, I don't think that's available in the UK, but
I can tell you how to get one for free. So you can send me a message, and I can help you hook you up. So
if anybody's interested, Tony will message me. I'll message Tony. We'll sort it out. We'll figure it out. Right. So I'll go on with my second to last one. My second to last one is probably the loosest of the adaptations, I think, and it is Return of the Living Dead 3. So the Return of the Living Dead franchise is kind of it's one of the writers from the Night of the Living Dead, broke up with kind of his creative partner, George A. Romero. They had some creative differences. He went on, wrote a book, which is technically a sequel to Night of the Living Dead. Then they made a film. Dan O'Bannon made a film, a punk rock zombie film, new rules, new aesthetic, lots of comedy, camp and cheese. They made a second one. Not as good, apparently. I don't think I've seen that one. But Brian Yuzna of Reanimator, Bride of the Reanimator, Society, which we've covered on this podcast as well. Lots of great body horror stuff. He said, right, I was a bit disappointed of the lack of the bride in Bride of the Reanimator. So I want to do a Bride of Frankenstein film. But then one of the writers came in and they were like, what do you want to do with the Return of the Living Dead? And they went, I want to do Romeo and Juliet. So that the Capulets and the Montagues are now the living and the dead. So we meet Julie and I think it's Kurt, who are these kind of punk, heavy metal, goth kind of. It's not really stated what kind of they're into, but it's like there's a lot of leather and spikes and stuff going on. Kurt has stolen his dad's access card to this military installation. And they are experimenting with the trioxin gas and what created the Return of the Living Dead in the first movie. They go and they see somebody brought back to life, and they're like, "What the fuck? Oh, this is weird. I don't know what's going on." They leave because the military are trying to use the dead, and they're trying to bring them back to life and use them for military applications. Later, these kids are really horny. Of course, it's Romeo and Juliet, so they are super fucking horny.
They really are. There is a lot of,
and it's their
it was just
like, as well.
It is. It's like, let's just get a chance to show some boobs.
That as well. There is that.
That was what it was.
It is a horror movie after all. I know you're a fan of Warm Bodies, which is a lot more of a tamer version of a Romeo and Juliet zombie film. And I love that. I love that as well. But this is a bit more my bag. I think this is a bit more definitely in my kind of vein of stuff. And this is balls to the wall kind of extreme love story, and the lengths you will go to keep a love alive, quite literally. And what happens is, right after she grabs his knob while he's driving his motorcycle, they have a horrible accident. She gets flung into a telephone pole and breaks her neck, dies instantly, dead. And he is heartbroken, he's disturbed, he's like, oh my god, I was so in love with her. 6 months, it's like that again. They're right in the honeymoon period of their relationship, and she's dead. And what he does, he makes the decision to go back to the lab and use the trioxin on her and bring her back. And unfortunately, there's a side effect. She needs to eat brains. Brains.
What? Who would have seen that coming?
Right. Am I right? And slowly but surely, they have to deal with the ramifications of this choice that has been made by Kurt to bring Julie back from the dead. And she hates this. She doesn't know what this hunger is initially. She's like, I'm so hungry. I'm so hungry. And, they get in trouble with these gangsters, these kind of, this kind of mob, or whatever you want to call them, a gang or whatever. Yeah. Troublemakers. Let's call them troublemakers. And that leads to the death of this guy. And she starts eating his brains. And she's like, this is it. This is what I need. I need to eat these brains. And she realizes as well. So again, if you're trigger warning as well, because if you are someone who has a history with maybe self-harm, maybe this film probably isn't for you. Because
I did not see that coming.
Yeah. It's a big one. It's a big one. So Julie starts hurting herself because it offsets the feelings of hunger. It distracts her body and brain from this need to devour human flesh, because she doesn't want to eat a boyfriend. She's still very much who she was. She still has her consciousness and personality. She just needs brains.
Like you do.
So we get to the point where it kind of introduces, again, it's very alternative. This is a very alternative love story, and it introduces the kind of self-harm and the almost body modification, if you will, as well, the body mods that goes into that. And she becomes like this. She's put glass in her face. She put like metal wires, all sorts, sticking out of her, and she really becomes a kind of bride of Frankenstein. She's got piercings in her nipples and everything.
Just because.
Crazy, mental, what the fuck? But I absolutely adored it. And I think this is probably one of the best, threequels that's ever been made, because it does something really different with the franchise. It adds this Shakespearean element. And again, it is a tragic love story. And
sure.
And again, I won't give away the ending, but let's just say it's tragic. It's a tragic end. Within all this mental zombie creature feature film, the main two performances really sell that they're in love, and you believe it. And you believe it all the way through, and they're your kind of they're your touchstone in this film, with all this wacky, spines coming out, heads popping off, all this other shit going on. You're there for the love story. You believe it, and you want them to be happy. You want them to, figure this out, sort something out, and I really, really dug this. It's a lot of fun. It's 90 minutes. It's an absolute blast all the way through. Doesn't lose your attention. And I think it, again, is very much in the vein, probably more so than a lot of these adaptations of Romeo and Juliet, because Romeo and Juliet is bloody. It is really a tragedy. Everyone's like, oh, Romeo and Juliet story. And like, no, it's a fucking tragedy.
Everybody dies.
Really badly. And it's only then do they stop warring and stuff, the two families. You watched it as well. What did you think?
I was really impressed. I mean, you mentioned that the lead actors, they're the actor. Like, they spent all the money getting them there. They went to acting school, and everybody else is like, do you want to be in our movie? Even the guy who plays the priest, the Riverman character, he was giving it his all, but he was underserving the rest of the script. it was more fun than I deserved to have watching this. Now, to be fair, I watched the Return of the Living Dead when it first. I remember that.
Okay.
And I remember, and the kind of jokiness of it, as opposed to like the Romero stuff, which is not a joke. So although what I did find fascinating, and then I started to think about, is that he's still poking at him, because you've got Night of the Living Dead, Return of the Dead, and then this is the third one. And so Dawn of the Dead is the third one. No, Day of the Dead is the third one. And that is the one where they're experimenting on the zombies, and they do that in here. So they're just still commenting on whatever Romero is doing. So I thought that was nice, in addition to the Romeo and Juliet stuff. I agree. And I think the reason this works as a Romeo and Juliet thing, because I'm with you, people keep thinking like, oh, it's a real Romeo and Juliet thing. Well, that's terrible. You don't want that. Don't you mean pick somebody else? Pick a it's real Beatrice and Benedict thing. Oh, where they hate each other. That's what every romantic comedy is, Beatrice and Benedict. That is the romantic comedy. They end up together at the end. Romeo and Juliet die, everybody. And their children, literally. I mean, talk about children. I mean, she's 12. And so let's calm down. Let's calm down just a little. And so I think they really acknowledge the tragedy of Romeo and Juliet in this. And it was way more fun than I deserved to have watching a third zombie movie.
Right.
And I'd not seen this one before. I'd seen 1 and 2, and I guess I didn't realize the series continued. So series, we'll say, air quotes. It's much like the No Retreat, No Surrender series, in name only. So they're zombies. I enjoyed it. I thought it was a lot of fun. Thanks for introducing it to me. I think everybody should watch it.
I introduced I'd never seen it before either. So I was like, I'll give this a go. It sounds interesting. I knew it was kind of based on Romeo and Juliet. So I was like, fuck it, why not? And I love it. I would definitely go back. This is definitely one I'll revisit, because I had a lot of fun with it.
So that's cool. So each of us discovered one brand new in this process.
Absolutely.
Get over it for me. And I didn't know about this one either. So it's been a ride. We're down to our final 2 picks.
That's right. You go for it. Go on.
Okay, this is I went reverse order just because, but really it works out well, because this is probably my favorite on the list. It's a comedy. It is timey-wimey. It is some of the finest acting by fine actors. It was a play first. It was a play about a play within a play, and there's a player in it, and it is Tom Stoppard's masterpiece, Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead, with Gary Oldman, Tim Roth, and Richard Dreyfuss, and some other people. They are really irrelevant, and they're fine. Everybody else is fine.
They're great.
This is just like the other one, just like Poins in my last one. It's the retelling of that through a different perspective. This is Hamlet retold through the perspective of Rosencrantz Guildenstern. It is one of the funniest films I've ever seen in my whole life. It lays into the play within a play thing when the player shows up, and there's that whole scene where he's going through all the things they do. We do this and this and this. Cut. And I've never seen this live, so I don't know how they do that. I don't know how you do that on the stage. I've only seen the film. It is great. I know actually they were originally cast in each other's roles, which is brilliant, because that plays with, they don't know who Rosencrantz Guildenstern are. I think that's brilliant. The questions tennis section is so well done. Yeah. I would love to see that live. It's one of my favorite things. I've written this movie into other stories of mine, because it is so important to me. I think it's just brilliant. James Acklone said the same thing when he saw this for the first time. He was like, I didn't know you could do that. And so it's a love letter to Hamlet. Tom Stoppard loves Hamlet. He actually wrote Shakespeare in Love. It's brilliant. Brilliant. I can't tell you enough, because it's written in regular English, but then they just slip into Hamlet, and then they just come right back. And they're like, oh, right, we showed up. So it's in real time. It starts on their journey. By the way, I don't know if everybody knows how it ends. It's in the title. So spoiler.
Fair enough.
It's so good. I don't know when you saw it first. I saw it came out in 1990. I probably saw it in 91. Yeah.
So I would have been far too young.
So you didn't see it then?
No, I did not.
Right.
I think I would have been 4. So
sorry. Yeah.
That's all right. Don't worry. I'm just making you feel very old. That's
fine. No, it's fine. So I graduated from high school in 91.
So I watched it the other day for the first time.
Oh.
And I'll be honest, I didn't find it all that funny.
That's okay.
I'll be honest. Like, again, it was like I was saying earlier, I think it's one I would enjoy being in. I think you are right. The question section is the highlight for me. The tennis game.
So good.
I just think that's genius. I think that's so well rehearsed, and it has to be. that you would just get that, just to have that spontaneity, that fun. You know, I love that. I love that game. I will say there was I thought I expected it to cut into the play a bit more often, which it doesn't really do. And I do think there's a lot of stuff where it's just like, oh, they're just going to walk down a corridor for a bit and do stuff. They're just like making noises. So I don't think this particular one is my bag.
Totally fair.
I definitely got more out of my Private Idaho, but this one I was like, I found it quite difficult to kind of get through. It wasn't as funny as I expected it to be. I don't know. I love Gary Oldman. I love Tim Roth. I love all the other actors, but there was just something about it that I just didn't quite grasp. But I recommend people to see it just to see if it grabs them. But it didn't necessarily grab me. I've heard about it. I've known about it for a long time. I've never sat down and watched it. I think maybe if I was an avid Hamlet fan, I imagine I would like it. But I was expecting more of the cross-cutting and, oh, here's Hamlet and here's that. I thought it was going to be more of them like, or making comment like, you know, asides while being in a scene or something like that. But actually there was just a lot of them just wandering about, not really.
Yeah, I thought that was, see, I think that's what's funny. So what I find funny about it is they're pointless. They are literally plot devices. And they're
literally waiting around for the next
one.
They
have nothing else to do. So to me, they're in the play. This is the third play within the play. They're in the play. There are Rosencrantz, Guildenstern, and they're waiting to die. That's all they exist for one thing. They're called upon by the king. I mean, Hamlet's real best friend is in the whole play. They're not Hamlet's friends. Horatio is the friend. Do you know what I mean? Like, these are the fake friends. They're the college friends. They're not really going to be, they're not his people. So I think what makes it's sometimes a long pause. I just rewatched the Kids in the Hall redo, the new series of the Kids in the Hall. And there's a couple of series, and I forgot how well they use dead air to be funny. And it's hard to do this. So for me, the fact that they're lost and they don't know what they're doing, and the coin flippy thing that continues on because they're not real. And so the whole time they're questioning their own reality. And so to me, it is
there's a little bit of waiting for Godot in there, isn't there?
100%. Yeah. So I just think, it's not, you're right. It's not a knee slappy funny, but I think as I get older, I don't necessarily think that like you said, you laughed out loud with She's the Man. I did too. I don't necessarily think that we're watching for the first time Gilmore Girls right now.
Sure.
That show's fucking hysterical, but it's mostly just in Amy Sherman's Palladino's brilliant dialogue writing and the way that those actors perform it is what's funny. And it's not necessarily that the lines are funny. So to me, it's just the looks on their face. You've got these two actors owning themselves. Richard Dreyfuss essentially just playing himself. I get everything that you're saying. I understand. To me, that's why it's funny though.
But there are parts I enjoy. I enjoyed the idea that they were like, oh, watch this. Oh yeah, that's he has the feather and the stone, and he's like, you would think that this one would be heavier, and you'd be right. I love that. I love that they're like, because they are. It's almost a little bit Deadpool as well, because it's like breaking the fourth wall. They know they're in a play within a play within a play.
Yeah,
and I get what you mean though. With them, like, it's quite funny that they're just waiting around for their next line almost, which is what the actors would do in real life as well.
If you think Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, they're so pivotal to the story of Hamlet, but they're so pointless that nobody knows who they are, and so they're just in the background. So it's like this is a noises off situation. I don't know. I hear what you're saying. I get it. It's not for everybody. It is 100% my bag. I like how droll it is. I like Tom Stoppard. And like his writing partner, Harold Pinter, I like too.
Yeah. Then again, Forbidden Planet is definitely not for everyone. Like, it's one that certain people will get a lot of joy out of, and some people might find it a bit boring, a bit dull, a bit stuffy, a bit staid. It is that. But yeah, no, there is definitely some real positives to it. I think Gary Oldman and Tim Roth are really good in it. Obviously, they're the leads, and there's some great moments where, again, I did chuckle and like, oh yeah, I like the kind of anarchic ludicrousness and the the absurdist comedy of it. I quite enjoyed. But yeah, on the whole, it wasn't my favorite, but I do recommend people see it, make up their own minds, because I think there is
100%
still still something to be gleaned from it and something to enjoy, to take out of it as well. I do love the spookier, weirder elements, like with when like Gary Oldman's having a bath and Dreyfus is like just floating around and changing costumes, and again it's that play within a play. So they're like, oh well, we know you're going to die, and this is and this is us acting out that story, and that's why they're getting so confused. They're watching it and like, oh, that's quite similar to this and that. And almost what's going on with the king and the queen and everything, and it's like oh right, yeah, maybe, yeah, I can see similarities there. And when they're trying to figure out Hamlet's madness, and they're like, you're rich, you're handsome, you've got a lovely woman, why have you gone a bit mad? It's like, no idea. I've got everything. I don't know why I've gone mad. I've no idea. It's like, let's figure it out. And like the idea of like them, like, I'm Hamlet, like, and like, you're Hamlet, or am I Guildenstern? Are you Rosencrantz? Like there's definitely some fun to be had, but I just it didn't win me over. It didn't bowl me over as much as yourself. Anyway, a film that did bowl me over, and again, this is for me, this is an oldie but a goodie. And again, this is not really one of the obscure ones I'm pulling out here.
No. Everybody
it is,
knows this one.
So Al Pacino once said, Shakespeare's plays are bloodier than Scarface. And he'd be right.
He would be. And
I am going to pick Scarface as a version of Macbeth.
Agreed.
So we have a young man flying up the ranks in the drug dealing gangster world. He's from Cuba, Tony Montana, and again, the only thing that this is really missing is kind of a Lady Macbeth, because like
Elvira's not that really.
No, she's quite passive, really. I think they kind of get a little bit of Lady Macbeth more in Tony Montana's sister. I think that's because she's got a bit more fire to her. And obviously he wants to have sex with her a little bit incesty. So again, going back to Shakespeare, a bit of incest.
Yes.
So we've got that. If you've seen Scarface, you know Scarface. You've heard of Scarface. I'm not going to go into the plot very much, but it is basically that rise to power. We've got Manny, who is his Banquo.
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely.
Who, spoilers again for a film most people probably have seen. He kills Manny, much like Banquo. Macbeth kills Banquo. We've got our Macduff in the drug dealer Sosa, who initially is friends with him but betrays him. If anything, Scarface is probably a bit nicer than Macbeth because he doesn't He doesn't kill women and kids. Macbeth fucking does.
Macbeth kills everybody.
He's like, and again, we have at the end, we have the Macbeth character professing his invincibility, much like Scarface at the end, taking all those bullets and like, come on, kill me, or say hello to my little friend.
Right.
Kill all you cockroaches, all that. And it's there. Frank Lopez, who's played by Robert Loggia. Robert Loggia, he's Duncan. He's the king.
Sure, yeah, 100%.
He takes him and he takes his whole life. And again, we see that rise. We see that rise to power. But we also see the madness it brings, the stress, the problems. It's literally Macbeth on cocaine.
On cocaine, with piles and piles of cocaine.
Piles and piles of cocaine. That's literally what it is. Again, apart from we don't really have a Macbeth. We don't really have the witches. But what we do have is the slogan that the world is yours. So that's his premonition, that's his vision, that's his future. The world is yours, and that becomes his slogan. And I'm currently reading, as you know, I'm sharing a little bit of the patronage with you. I've been doing Scarface comics. I've got another one coming up, a prequel.
I know. Pretty exciting.
Scarface coming up, so I'm really looking forward to that. And I'm really enjoying kind of revisiting that character and that world as well. I didn't play the video game, which is called The World Is Yours, but and which was a sequel to the film as well. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. I think there's a lot of parallels, and I think that's what attracted Pacino. I think De Palma basically sold it to Pacino going, this is a modern Macbeth. This is Miami, 80s excess at its craziest. Here we are, coked up Macbeth. A Coke Beth, if you will.
Coke Beth.
And again, he starts from these very humble beginnings. He's a political prisoner from Cuba that comes over, and we just see that rise and that determination, that desire, and that fire within him. And he goes, but what if? But what if? But what if? And these opportunities that he takes and rises and rises and rises. And I think it's one of De Palma's best films, probably one of the best Pacino films as well, because Pacino did a documentary about finding Richard III. He is a Shakespearean.
He loves Shakespeare, yeah. His Richard, yeah. That's the thing. I've seen that. I've seen that thing, but I still think the Ian McKellen's Richard III, because I've not seen Al Pacino's Richard III, but I've seen the Looking for Richard. Yeah.
I don't think you can. I'm not sure if you can view it. Can you see his play?
I don't think so.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
No, I think it's just the documentary of him making the play. But he loves Shakespeare, and I think that's what he saw in this. He clearly must have seen those parallels, because he went, "Yeah, this is for me. I'm going to do this." So so Scarface is my number one. Your number one was obviously Rosencrantz and Guildenstern was dead. Do you have any honorable mentions?
No, I just want to say one thing about Scarface.
Sorry,
though, is that
sorry,
no,
it's all good.
No, it's fine. No, here's my thing about Scarface. Everything you said, true. Pfeiffer, Mary Elizabeth Mastrantonio. Here's the thing: in America, Scarface has become a dorm room poster guy.
Yeah.
So every douche has like, he's the villain, you guys, and it always drives me crazy. So it took some of the shine out of it. I didn't rewatch this. I didn't, and I went back and forth on, am I going to rewatch it? And I was like, well, I really have kind of run out of time. Anyway, so it's okay. But it's one of those movies where the culture around it sucked it out a little bit for me, only because of like the people misreading it. It's a misreading of what it is. So you have brought me back around to realize it is that fucking good. But in the moment, it's like in my life, in my high school, in my college life, in my adult life, all these dumb people who worship Tony Montana, you guys are idiots. Is all I'm saying.
Well, this. I'm not going to repeat myself, because I've said all this in our Goodfellas podcast with Andy.
Right.
So we've said all this.
You know, you have.
And, I don't know if you've listened to it yet. Obviously, I sent it to you early.
Yeah.
But yeah. People miss the fucking point. It is a tragedy. He's not someone to admire. He's not someone to be. Rappers kind of admire him, and all these other people, and they use the parlance like the yayo and all this other stuff. I'm intelligent enough as a kid, as a teenager, to know I shouldn't idolize this fucking guy. People don't idolize Macbeth, so people shouldn't idolize Scarface.
100%. Thank you for saying that.
It's the fucking same thing. I agree. And I have a similar problem with the Joker film,
which I didn't see for probably all those reasons.
Yeah, because of the culture around that and the people, the incel movement, all this other shit. Like, that's why I struggle with that film. I think it's an excellent performance. I think the story is, it's here and there, but it's the performance you're there for. And it is a very good performance. But again, it's the culture around that character and the design. I'll be honest, they've cancelled Batgirl and they're making a Joker sequel. I think a Joker sequel was never even needed. I don't think it's necessary.
Yeah.
Don't think it's required. I'll watch it, sure. I'll see what it's like. Will it be good? Lady Gaga's in it. It's a musical, whatever. I'll see it. But I think we needed Batgirl and we didn't need Joker 2. That's the
tagline of this show. We're talking about Shakespeare, but we didn't need. I love that.
Managed to get in. But
I love that. So my honorable mentions, you mentioned one, is obviously Just One of the Guys. I love that movie. I can't. It was important to me as a kid.
There you go.
Not for the lechy reasons, but
no.
And some of my favorite Shakespeare adaptations are the ones where it's in the title, right? So, but like you said, I didn't put Romeo and Juliet on there because there's so many. Obviously, Valley Girl is on there. Pretty in Pink. Anytime you have, and again, those get happier endings, obviously, but the remake of West Side Story, the new West Side Story, I thought was spectacular. So the list of Romeo and Juliet goes on and on and on and on and on. I do think, obviously, Lion King, we can't get away without saying Lion King is Hamlet is excellent. But I do think Baz Luhrmann's Romeo and Juliet is almost perfect. And I do think there's a lot of straight, like with the name, and then obviously all the Kurosawa ones you sent me. So master. So watch the Kurosawa ones without a doubt.
And also go back and listen to me and Andy's Clone Wars on
absolutely
Throne of Blood, which is based on Macbeth, and Ran, which is based on King Lear.
So good.
Two of the best films I've covered on the podcast easily. Obviously, it's Kurosawa, so it goes without saying, really. Right. But we love both of those adaptations. Obviously, we have to pick a winner. I will not spoil it, which one we chose as winner.
Should go, yeah.
But it's the only other Shakespeare thing I've done so far on the podcast. So yeah, absolutely go and check out Ron. I will also mention The Bad Sleep Well, which is another Kurosawa film. It's his take on Hamlet. It's a modern day one. It's not a samurai one, and it's about post-war Japan and a seedy business and doing very seedy things, very very horrible things. And again, the ending is a bit. There's a lot of kind of businessy talk at the start, and the ending's a bit like, oh, okay, right. I guess it's over now. But the center of it is quite interesting, and they do some really unique things, and the cinematography is quite good. So I do recommend still seeing it, but again, didn't quite make my list. I do prefer Ron and Throne of Blood if you're looking for a Kurosawa Shakespeare film. But you mentioned Valley Girl as well. I'm going to bring up. Did you have any more? Sorry, did you have any more?
No. I mean, I could go on and on. Ethan Hawke's Hamlet is very good. I mean, there's so many.
You mentioned Valley Girl. I would like to mention Romeo and Juliet. Which was James Gunn's first script, and it stars Sean Gunn, who's in it. It's his first role.
He's on Gilmore Girls.
And again, it's a very extreme, it's very tongue-in-cheek. It's a trauma film, so go in there looking to be offended, because you will be offended. Whoever you are, whatever walk of life you come from, you will be offended if you watch a trauma film. Trust 100%. Me. Especially if you watch something like Poltergeist. That's a very offensive film, but I still quite enjoy it. But yeah, if you're a Muslim or a lesbian, especially, quite an offensive film. Valley Girl. Here's an interesting one. Ex Machina as the Tempest.
The Tempest, 100%.
Yeah, sure. Very, you've got the creator, the daughter, the guy wants to take the daughter away.
Yeah. Bill Weasley. Yeah.
This is one I'm not very familiar with the characters or what they are, because they never really crossed over to the UK. Strange Brew.
Loved Strange Brew. That's Hamlet.
Yeah, it's Hamlet. Yeah, absolutely. It's called Elsinore Beer as well. It's all that. It's there. It's all there. There's a ghost.
Bob and Doug McKenzie, take off, eh?
Yeah, take off, eh? I love that. I just love that. Oh dear, brilliant! Like brilliant kind of Canadian stereotype stuff. I love it.
So good. They're both Canadian, of course.
Yeah,
Rick and Dave.
They can make fun of that.
Yeah.
It's fine. But yeah, I really enjoyed that. I had a lot of fun with that, but didn't quite make the list. King of Texas, which I couldn't find. Oh man. It's really good. It's I'll see if I can buy it and I'll send it to you, or we'll do something. And
I could probably find a copy to buy. I just couldn't find it.
Yeah, no worries. Don't worry. But yeah, it's fun. It's a Western. It was a TV show. Again, it's got Manny in from. It's got a great fucking cast. Patrick Stewart as a Western oil baron type person. It's fantastic. Really, really good. Go and check it out. I know we're running out of time, so I'll go a bit more quickly. Last one is an Othello take, and it's based in the UK jazz scene. And it stars the prisoner. It stars what's his name? Patrick McGowan. Patrick McGowan.
Yeah.
He plays the Iago role, and it's fantastic.
You sent me the link. I haven't watched it yet.
Yeah, it's I'll spoil it a little bit. It does have a happy ending-ish.
Oh.
So it's a bit tamer, but I think the performances are there and the manipulation is there, and Patrick McGowan's fucking great in it. So I really recommend All Night Long. It's called All Night Long. It's from 1962 or something like that.
Nice. Anyway,
listener comments very quickly. We've only got 3. So Angry Andy Reviews and Angry Andy Reviews on Twitter says "Oh goody," which is a gif of Scar from Lion King.
Yes.
Mike also says, Mike from Genuine Chit Chat also says, I was checking to see if someone had mentioned Lion King, of course. And then Blake Biles on his Instagram account has said, I must give Romeo Must Die a rewatch. Haven't seen it in 20 years, but loved it at the time.
Loved it. Yeah.
There we go.
Lee and Aaliyah.
Absolutely.
I was on. I mean, any chance to rewatch a Jet Li film, I'm going to watch. I love it. That's a good movie. Yeah.
That is good.
He's great in it. Yeah.
Oh, such a talent. But yes, Tony, we're finally finishing. I'll let you go. But before you go, just tell people what you're up to, what's going on, what have you got coming up, who are you?
Who am I? I am, I am the man who is going to stab you right in the front. No, yes, I have a website, arfarina.com. You can send me a message there. If you're like, I want to hear about Hoopla Digital, there's a contact me. You can
there
send
we
me a
go.
message there. Yeah. And I've got some stuff. I've got some short stories you can read, and I'm on Comics in Motion Network, as you lovingly mentioned. And I've got Indie Comic Spotlight on there, and I'm part of the Pop Gorillas.
Yes.
And Jack and I do Season's Greetings, and I've shown up on Jack's amazing
Back to the filmography. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm going to come on again soon for that. And so I'm just a busy guy over there at the Comics in Motion Empire, run by Chris and Dave. And I am clearly on my way up. I don't know if I feel like maybe I'm the Cassius of the group. Maybe I'm going to find a way to take them down. No, that's not true. I love those guys. So anyways, that's Brian. You've been a regular over there.
Yeah.
And,
well, I'm about to this Friday. I am about to start co-hosting with Tonya Todd, one of my favorite people. So I'll bring the Hulk and she'll bring the She to She-Hulk Attorney at Law. So we're gonna have some fun. I'm not sure who the guests are. I don't think we've decided, I'll let her run it. She's a very organized lady. I am not an organized.
Oh, I'm doing that. I'm going to be on her.
Is that it?
Yeah, Jack and I are going to do 1984.
Oh, amazing. Banned books. I can't wait. I can't wait for that. I'm not much of a reader, but I'm really looking forward to that because I'm against censorship for the most part. I think we should have age ratings and
100%. Yeah.
But I'm against censorship really. Let the art be the art that it's supposed to be.
100%.
There we go. And there's a lot to talk about, I'm sure, on those podcasts. But thank you. This has been amazing. I've really enjoyed getting back into my theatrical roots. So yes, I've liked enjoying talking about treading the boards again. So, and I won't talk about it now for another year until Dennis makes fun at me for mentioning it again. All right. So again, you can find me at Facebook. So it's at Secret Balls on Facebook. Twitter, it's at Dan_Balls. Instagram, it's at Spider Dan Secret Balls. Review, like, share, comment, subscribe, etc. Don't forget to use the hashtag Prepare for Prattle when you interact with us. And if you want to join the Prattalion and to be briefed in full on the Secret Balls, swing over to Spider Dan and the secretballs.com at Prattle World. So that's BORES.com. And I'd like to thank my patrons on Patreon. I'm Jack's Musings, Simon Cotton, Paul Meller, Max Byrne, Scott Hodgson, Mike Burton, Angry Andy Reviews, and Tonya Todd. So thank you for your continuing donations. It's very much appreciated and helps Prattle World keep on turning. And if you ever find yourself in a position to help the podcast, please consider it. Thank you again, Tony. This has been a dream of a Midsummer's Night Dream, which it quite literally is. Quite literally is for me.
Midsummer's Night. It is
for me.
It is. It's Midsummer's dinner time or tea time, as you may say. Yes, indeed. This was so fun. I hope everybody loved it. Read more Shakespeare.
Absolutely.
Listen to the audiobooks. Let's do it.
Let's do it. Go see some plays. Go see some theatre. Do it. It's meant to be seen. It's meant to be performed. And then go away and read it. I'd say go see it first. Go see whatever
100%,
play you're reading, and then come away and read it as well. And there's cliff notes if there's anything you don't understand. So go and read that if there's anything you don't get, or just message somebody, message Tony, message me, and we'll tell you what we think certain things mean. But it's not a universal thing. It's just our own interpretation, as is most of these films of the Shakespeare stories. So
Indeed.
We will leave it on that. Thank you again, Tony. You are a fabulous guest, and I will enjoy talking to you again very soon, I imagine.
100%. Thank you for having me on, man. Goodbye,
My pleasure.
everybody.
Bye.